Hello. Good morning, everyone. We're about to start soon. If everyone can find their seats, that would be great. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of FedGeoDay. First, we want to say another thank you to our sponsors that made FedGeoDay 2026 possible. Our platinum sponsor, RGI, Reinventing Geospatial. Our gold sponsors are Carasoft and Deloitte. Our silver sponsors are Precisely, Development Seed, Motif, Zentity Corporation, New Light Technologies, and ActionNet. Monica.
Good morning and welcome back to FedGeoDay 2026. We're glad to have you all here for day 2. To get us started, I'd like to introduce Andrea Johnson, Deputy Division Chief and Acting Division Chief of the U.S. Census Bureau's Geography Division. Andrea, welcome.
Good morning. It's great to see we have a great crowd again today. I want to thank all of the speakers from yesterday. Very dynamic sessions and very varied. And I really want to thank all of the folks who you've seen guiding people, giving people lunches, making sure that this happens. This is actually my first conference that's a conference I would have gone to outside of the Census Bureau that is at the Census Bureau, and I really feel like I'm traveling into a different space. So thank you very much. I'm also want to do a shameless plug for the unconference. You'll see that on the boards outside, there's already many little colored tags. So let's take advantage of this opportunity and kind of review what you might be interested in later this afternoon. Okay, given remarks, I have to say I really love the theme of this year's conference, building ecosystems for federal data stewardship. And I've been thinking about this as a theme, not only for the conference, but sort of I've been reflecting on yesterday and my own life as a geographer for over 30 years and maybe a demographer. I don't know what I am. I'm a little bit of both. And really our industry as a whole and how our industry is its own ecosystem that has really been growing and changing just like other ecosystems. So I got to pondering, what is the definition of an ecosystem? And with a little help from AI, I found a lovely definition from National Geographic. So an ecosystem is a dynamic functional unit in science consisting of a specific geographic area where living organisms interact with each other and their non-living environment, including weather, soil, landscape, census tracts. No, I'm teasing. These components work together to process energy and cycle nutrients, forming a complex, interdependent bubble of life. So think about that. I know that's really biology, right? My husband would be happy, but we're geographers, economists, demographers, data scientists. We have a different sort of blend of our own ecosystem, but really our industry ecosystem. And to me, it sort of started maybe 34 years ago, and it's becoming more complex each year. We're still building it, and I'm happy to say that we're bringing more data into the ecosystem to give it life. So when Dr. Jarman spoke yesterday, he discussed how in his journey here at the Census Bureau and his journey with geospatial, how important it was at the time of Katrina to precisely know and identify where businesses that were impacted by Katrina and the economy impacted by Katrina was. And at the time, he didn't have the data to help out with that. We came over to geography and he reminded me that 20 years ago, my organization was unable to assist, right? So that was 20 years ago, let's just point that out. But that makes sense. While I jest how the natural, while I jest to Mr. Jarman, or Dr. Jarman, if you think about it, 20 years ago, we weren't really kind of thinking like, oh yeah, I really want to see how I can support economic data. We were kind of like, we had just come off of Tiger. We were like trying to get to the next census, really thinking about our tiny little direct mission in the building. But look at where we are today. We have such a diversity in this room. We also have started taking a different and better look at how we manage data using geography. So today, the Census Bureau has significant initiatives to identify ways in which we can link job data, economic data, people data, and business data, all with place. Place is the tie that binds. Place is the beginning of that ecosystem as defined in that definition I read earlier. And so today I'm very excited that for a change, unlike 20 years ago, we're gonna have some economists and people who discuss the nation's economy, the nation's workers, kind of have a fireside chat on how we can do better with geospatial science. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the integration of geospatial statistical data at BEA, BLS, and the Census Bureau by welcoming my counterparts. So Dr. Ron Jarman, come on. Dr. Vipin Arora, Director of BEA, and Mr. Bill, I should know this because I'm from Chicago. Wojtrowski. I should know this, I should know this. He's the Deputy Commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. These gentlemen are gonna have a morning fireside chat without a fire to discuss a lot of different things. Thank you. Oh, you need mics. Let's get you some mics. That was not my job. Okay, so. You got one line?
There we go. So welcome to Between the Ferns. Shall we go? No, we shouldn't. So, well, thank you, Andrea. So we just probably gonna talk about whatever the heck we want to up here, but
you always do that anyway.
I do. So the people write talking points and then you just go riff on whatever you want. But so I think we're just supposed to kind of get things warmed up, and then some actual real experts are going to come up here in a little bit and talk about things. But like Andrea said, geography is sort of the common element of a lot of our statistical products across not just census, BEA, and BLS, but all of the whole federal statistical system. So people want data at the local level, and so it is the thing that's common between business data, demographic data, health data, environmental data that you see coming out every day. So being able to produce data down to a lower level of granularity is a complaint we hear constantly. So what are the two things we hear about? People want the data at a more granular level, and they want it at a more timely level. Okay. That's not always easy. Okay. So first of all, I'll just give you an example of, we get a lot of, and we've been working with tribal folks to try to get better data for Indian country. But one of the problems is you have a small population and people want detailed statistics for that small population, the same kind of statistics they were used to for a place like New York City. Well, the requirement then would be to ask everybody who lives there survey questions. Okay, so your penance for living in a small community is to be in every survey that we take. So that's not fair. Okay. It is fair for all the large companies that we work with to be in all of our surveys because they're large companies and they have a staff to do that sort of thing. But I think data users often say, I need this low level geography data. So, well, if we had, good data for that small population, everybody in that population would be participating in that survey. So one of the things that we try to do is try to use models. So Census Bureau has, local small area income and poverty estimates. BLS has local area unemployment statistics. That's not because we saturate those local areas with survey coverage. It's because we use surveys and then borrow strength from other data sources, administrative data sources typically, to build a model. So what does that mean then? Then it's a model. And it has uncertainty with it. So, the problem with local area data is going to be noisier than data at a more aggregate level, and we just always try to remind users of that fact. But like Andrea said, our ability to do this is much greater than it used to be. So I think that the future is bright on that. So I'll turn it over. I don't know, Bill or Vipin, if you guys have anything you want to throw.
So I was just going to talk about me. So I grew up in Connecticut, and Connecticut has 169 cities and towns, and that's all people think about. They don't really think about the 8 counties, except each county has a sheriff, and I know this because I 50 years ago received a scholarship from the New Haven County Sheriff's Association. But
You're
if you
going to
know,
say you were arrested by a sheriff.
oh, I might have been too, but but recently Connecticut switched from counties to planning regions. So apparently I grew up in I had to look this up, South Central Connecticut planning region. No one in Connecticut's ever heard of these. And if the only thing I know about geography in Connecticut is the weather people, and they still refer to the 8 counties. So I don't know what these 9 apparently planning districts are. But so then I moved to Virginia and started working for the Bureau of Labor Statistics a million years ago. And Virginia has counties, but I live in an independent city. And so what I discovered, and I've spent the last few days wandering the Bureau of Labor Statistics, talking to much smarter staff than I have. And I discovered that geography isn't always geography. There are boroughs and there are parishes and there are parts of cities in 4 different counties. And in our most detailed geography, which is the local area unemployment statistics data, we look at every last bit of these. So we can tell you about unemployment in the city of Dallas in 4 different counties. So it's just amazing the amount of detail, and people want this detail. So apparently the people in Collin County don't care about the people in Denton County. And so, as we go on, I can tell you a few more stories that I learned wandering the staff over the past few days.
I mean, I'll just build on the county thing, because like we do county GDP at BEA. We do national GDP, as most of you probably know. And like as these things change, we have to figure out, how do you go back in time for a planning region that didn't exist? How the hell do you measure that, right? Think about that for a second. We just did that. We thought about that this year. We didn't want to make it up, so we didn't go that far back. But anyways, but like that, it's a tricky issue. And we get people all the time that say, well, it's great that you do, so we do national, right? Perfect. State, that's pretty straightforward, unless you're going back before Alaska and Hawaii became states, and then you got to deal with that issue in your time series, and then you're at counties. But we always get people that say, well, what mayor doesn't want to know, well, how much economic activity is there in my city? Or folks that are interested in clusters, or you name it. And one of the reasons I'm just really excited to be here today, because we don't have a tremendous amount of experience with geospatial data. And I think there's ways that you all, I'm hoping there's ways that you all can help us with ideas for how we can do things like, a part of a state that is not easily broken up into, a geographic region. It doesn't cross a certain amount of counties or whatever it is, right? But like, I think there's a lot of potential and a lot of, I'm very hopeful to get some help and some ideas today from you all in terms of how we could do something like this. Could we do like a bespoke GDP? I don't even want to say it, because then people are going to start asking for it, right? But like, can you customize it? Just imagine that, like you could say, hey, here's a map. Here's how we want to customize the gross domestic product in this area, like we might do with employment, or we might do with something else. That would be amazing. And what a service to taxpayers if we could do something like that. But we're not going to be able to do it alone. We're going to need your help. And so that it's just really nice to be here for that reason.
So maybe we can just ask ChatGPT. But so one thing I wanted to just kind of throw out there is how not only geography, but the tools of geospatial are increasingly important in sort of the production function of economic and demographic statistics. So I'll just give you an example. The Census Bureau has been using satellite imagery for sort of 2 main purposes. Kind of probably the biggest purpose is understanding change on the ground in terms of new housing units being built and needing to add those to the master address frame, so we can make sure we have a complete list to do things like the census and the ACS. But we're also using the same information in our construction indicators program. So not only can you see that new things are being built, but you can kind of see the stage. So one of the things, those indicators want to say things have been started, they're nearing completion, all this sort of. And so you can see on construction projects how far along they're getting using this, really rich satellite imagery. Now, if we had more money, we could pay for even better imagery and do more stuff with it. So this is, I think, something to watch in the coming years, to what degree we can use not only satellite imagery but other sensor type stuff to be able to look at both change in the sort of physical topography of the the sort of economic landscape, if you will, but also maybe even looking at things that might measure some activity, so traffic patterns and those sorts of things. So I think there's lots of cool stuff we can think about. And like Pippin said, we just we need some. But the three of us certainly aren't going to think of all of these things, and the people in this room aren't going to think of all the things. So there needs to be the ecosystem that Andrea talked about. That we could have a bigger community thinking about how can we use these things to improve our understanding of the country. So
Can I just riff real quick on
Go
what Ron
for it,
said?
go
So
for
like the cross-border movement of goods and services. Think about this for a second, right? Whether it's across international borders or across state borders, like we don't have a great handle on that, particularly within the United States, which might surprise you. Like state-to-state movements, county-to-county movements, those are really hard. And I just wonder, like some of the things you talk about, sensors or what, I don't even know. Like I have no idea, but like, can you guys help us with that? I think you probably can. That's the kind of thing that that I'm thinking about, that I'm talking about. When I was thinking about preparing for this, I was like, well, I don't even know what I don't know. So I'm just going to kind of like throw it out and see. Kyle's like shaking his head here. Kyle's from BA's on the next panel. He's like, dude, shut your mouth. All right. I'm going to stop talking now. Bill, go ahead.
no, but that's a good point. So we know way more about the movement of stuff between Ontario and Michigan than we do between Michigan and Ohio.
So Ron mentioned that our data users are always looking for more detailed data. So in the past few years, BLS has tried to expand a couple of our programs. One turned out to be relatively easy. My staff probably wouldn't agree with that, but and one turned out to be a real pain. So in our productivity program, we have national data that we put out on a quarterly basis using input from BEA and from our own employment data. So a few years ago, we started looking into being able to do productivity by state. And so it turns out that our friends down the hall at BEA have state GDP data, and we publish state employment data every month, a couple weeks after the national employment data. So while the two sources aren't exactly comparable, and there's a bunch of things that need to be massaged, that ended up being a fairly easy process, and we now produce annual state productivity estimates. So the other program was our job openings and labor turnover survey, which is JOLTS, which is very popular monthly program, which has a lot of industry detail on openings, hires, and separations. But there's a lot of interest beyond the national level. This is a very small sample, under 20,000 employers, and in some states, very tiny. So as I walked around my building, the last few days, telling stories about states with small populations, and kept referencing a particular county in Wyoming that has no people, which if any of you watch Yellowstone, you know what happens to what they do with former ranchers in that county. But so in the JOLTS program, we're doing sort of a small area estimation where we're doing modeling, just as Ron had talked about. So we borrow strength from other programs. For example, our quarterly census of employment and wages has information on employment and wages for pretty much every establishment in the country. And so we can see sort of the trends in Wyoming versus the trends in other states, and sort of the industry patterns in Wyoming. And then we can apply that to our JOLTS data by nationwide or by region. And so people a lot smarter than me sort of build these models and are able to produce this data. And the state JOLTS data, which we've been producing now for several years, has just gotten a lot of attention and sort of shows the ability to sort of take a little bit that you have and sort of expand it as much as possible. And people, of course, want more. As Ron said, they want county and they want city. And so I don't know that we're going that far, but we have been able to expand some of our data.
Yeah, it's you'll if you give a mouse a cookie thing. Okay, so I was told that we were supposed to take a half an hour, and I think we've probably taken about a half an hour, but just in case any of you had any questions for the three of us, we'll let you do that. So germane to the topic.
I have a question for you, Ron Jarman. Oh, there's no mic. That doesn't. If you got better imagery, would you be able to identify garages and basements converted to housing units?
So that's a good question, and I think we've given that some thought. Probably not basements because it's covered, but you may be able to at least come up with some predictions of neighborhoods where you think something's happening to outbuildings and stuff like that. So my son lives in Seattle, and all of the garages that were in the alley have all been converted to essentially Airbnbs, I think. But you can see that that's happened. Now, would you use just the imagery? Probably not. You would use the imagery to inform some other data collection that would go out and try to verify what's going on. So.
Eddie Pickle, one of the organizers here, and thank you guys again. Vipin, I want to really foot stomp what you're saying about if you all are able to integrate with more geographic stuff. At the last panel yesterday, we had an AI panel with leaders from NASA and USGS and Department of Interior talking about AI and how that's going to really help reshape the use of their data. But there's a strong demand in this overall space for this ecosystem where it's not only just the economic and the social sciences ecosystem, but now with the physical sciences, whether it's because of an emergency or because of, you name a new bridge, the loss of a bridge, what happens to economic activity. So, and the other thing I also want to note is historically, FedGeoDay has featured like the Census Opportunity Project and COIL. And I would urge you all to, if there's anything that you can do to create entities that integrate or that are looking for solutions across federal data sources so that, it's not just producing the data, but also leading in terms of analysis of cross-domain data, that would be fantastic. And I think a real benefit to the overall ecosystem and expand the ecosystem.
I would agree. I would just, I think right now with staff reductions and what have you, we're kind of focused on core mission issues more than a lot of the expansion. But, I think definitely going forward, we're very interested in those sorts of things. So.
Thanks for that, Eddie. For me, it's like I wrote down before I came. I wrote down a list of what are things that we could use geographic data for, and that goes to your expansion. But it had nothing. None of it is core to BEA. If we got to go to other places, and I'm looking at you, Andrea, in particular. I'm going to be in your office next week to talk about this, right? But we got to go to other places to get help. So your ideas are very welcome for how we might do some of these things. Good.
All right. Well, we'll free up the stage for more interesting people. So thank you for watching Between the Ferns.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to take about 2 to 3 minutes to prepare the stage for our panelists. So please feel free to talk quietly amongst yourselves.
Every person I go to, sorry, to look at me.
Well, they didn't have different like that.
Oh, there you go. Just, did you get any response for kids thing?
Oh, I emailed Jen. I don't know.
I heard a bunch of people dropped out. She was you're in DC. So, and I don't think.
Yeah. Well, my fifth grader, she was like,
Oh, sure. I don't really know. And there was something, Joe said he heard this, well, there's something around for everybody, it's just bring the kid to work. So, it's gonna be a day. Hey.
that was a great intro. Yeah.
I have no idea what's going on, as you know when we talk. I don't know this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why I want people to
No, that was a perfect teeing up for us.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
I
let's
have
go.
the IG. Good luck. Good luck. Yeah, we can go this way, this way.
Okay. Why not? Why is this?
All right, thanks for your patience, everyone. Next up, we have a panel on the integration of geospatial and statistical data at BEA, BLS, and the Census Bureau. I'd like to introduce Josh Coots, who will be moderating this discussion. Josh, over to you.
Well, thank you, Monica, and I would like to echo my colleagues who've been up here already today. Thank you, Monica Mardell and Eddie Pickle and all the people organizing. This is great. For us geographers here, we are in our sweet spot. We're at home in Suitland and talking about geography, so this is really great. So as Monica said, I'm Josh Coots. I'm a geographer with the U.S. Census Bureau's Geography Division. And I'm currently chief of the International National Engagement Branch, and I am excited to be moderating today's discussion. I think we really were queued up perfectly by the gentleman just up. They really posed a lot of the questions that we're going to be talking about. And we've got an outstanding panel to respond to some of those questions that they posed with a wide breadth of experience, representing 3 federal statistical agencies here at Suitland headquarters location, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the U.S. Census Bureau. And as the geographer on the panel, let me start with a foundational idea from geography, often referred to as Tobler's first law. Everything is related to everything else, but near things are more related than distant things. Geography isn't just where things happen, it shapes how data behaves, and it shapes our understanding of it. And we live in such a large country, it can be hard for us to engage with a national statistic that doesn't feel relevant to our neighborhood and lived experience, I think. Bill Wojtrowski really elucidated that perfectly with his examples. Today's conversation focuses on the integration of geospatial data and statistics. And at its core, this is another simple but powerful idea Everything happens somewhere, even economic activity. The type and magnitude of economic activity in any given place are shaped by location itself. Ports develop along coasts and rivers. Agriculture depends on land that's both fertile and affordable. And the data we collect through surveys of households and businesses is inherently tied to specific places. That spatial foundation underpins all of our statistical products. And traditionally, those products have been published as tables or static maps, but increasingly, they're delivered through interactive, geospatially enabled tools that people can access instantly, often from a device in their pocket. And it's never been easier to ask, what's happening right here, right now, where I am? And so user expectations are changing, as we heard. Our customers are asking for more geographically detailed data, not just at national or state level statistics, but insights at the level of counties, cities, and neighborhoods. They want more than static snapshots. They want to understand change over time and flow, how populations are shifting, how local economies are evolving, how communities are recovering from disruptions and disasters. In short, users are demanding data that's not only granular, but timely, dynamic, and actionable. So how do we meet that challenge? How do we balance increasing demand for spatial detail with the realities of data collection, statistical reliability, and confidentiality? And how are agencies leveraging geospatial data and methods, both externally and internally, to better serve our users and modernize our statistical systems? And we have the perfect panel to explore these questions, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Let me introduce them now. First, Kyle Hood, Chief of the Research and Analysis Group in Regional Economic Accounts at the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, where he leads efforts to improve and expand state, county, and metro level economic statistics. His team has developed experimental measures, including state-level R&D spending, personal income distribution by state, and quarterly personal consumption expenditures by state, and is published widely on statistical methods. His research spans banking services measurement, applied econometrics, nowcasting for official statistics, machine learning and alternative data, and interregional economic modeling, with work published in journals such as the Journal of Urban Economics and the Review of Income and Wealth. Please welcome Kyle. Next, we have Anya Stockberger, Chief of the Branch of Revision Methodology within the Division of Consumer Prices and Price Indexes at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. She leads methodological work supporting the production of the Consumer Price Index, including the development and implementation of revision and estimation techniques that ensure the accuracy, consistency, and reliability of one of the nation's most closely watched measures of inflation. I'm sure everyone has heard of the CPI. Anya and her team are responsible for revising the Consumer Price Index, keeping the market basket updated, and they play a critical role in managing revisions to the CPI's underlying geographic structure. With over 20 years of experience, she's overseen methodological improvements, including incorporating new data sources and developing products that measure inflation across the income distribution. She's recently served on an interagency committee addressing data gaps in the US territories and loves to talk about this issue. We've already connected with our experts in the US Census Bureau. So I'm looking forward to continuing with that discussion. Let's welcome Anya as well. Thank you very much, Anya. Thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least, we have Bethany DeSalvo, a senior demographer in the Social, Economic, and Housing Statistics, known as Seaside within the Census Bureau, where she played a leading role in developing the Community Resilience Estimates. The CRE integrates American Community Survey, population estimates, and decennial census data using novel modeling techniques to produce small area measures of social vulnerability to disasters. She has contributed to census statistical methodological research, including validation work linking estimates to outcomes such as COVID-19 impacts, and has co-authored research on resilience measurement and small area modeling. Her work reflects expertise in demographic analysis, statistical modeling, and integrating survey and administrative data for policy relevant insights. A key feature of the CRE is that they move beyond simple counts by combining multiple risk factors such as income, housing, and health into composite measures of resilience, supporting more targeted emergency preparedness, response, and recovery planning. Let's welcome Bethany. Thank you for being here, Bethany. Well, thanks again to the whole panel, and we're going to jump right into questions, with the first question being, how are you evolving your statistical programs to meet user demand for subnational and sub-state data, such as counties, metropolitan areas, or finer geographies, given that many of your core products are originally designed for national or state level estimation? What are the constraints to this evolution, and how is your organization working to meet user demand? Kyle, can we start with you? And if you have any additional opening remarks, you're welcome to make them.
Oh, no, I hadn't prepared any additional opening remarks. I also can tell that the mic is working, so
It is.
I'll just
I can hear you.
I'll just move on. So this question is a little bit difficult to answer, but I'll start out by saying there's really four things that, or there's really two things that BEA does with their data. One is our statistics that we publish are very comprehensive and they're consistent with each other. And so when people want, when users come in and they say, oh, we want more timely data or we want finer data, we try to make sure that the statistics that we publish are still comprehensive and consistent with each other. And so that means that we face these trade-offs when it comes to this kind of thing. So if somebody says, okay, well, I want to know the economic impacts of a natural disaster that happened on this date at this very fine geographical level of detail, that's probably something that we won't be able to answer, at least in sort of consistent with our system. But what we can do is we can try to increase either timeliness or geographic detail and show snapshots at least at certain points in time. And so that's kind of what I've been focusing on. I think as well, we see BEA has not to date spent a lot of time developing our own infrastructure for doing geospatial analysis. And so we're trying to kind of build our ecosystem little by little. We use geospatial data here and there for our county GDP, but we don't really have our own infrastructure built out quite yet. And we'd be happy to talk to people and get ideas about that kind of thing. We use geospatial data for a few things when we really needed it, like transportation hubs, like utility generation locations, maybe things like mining or resource extraction. In terms of like moving forward, we've tried to we haven't necessarily relied on the traditional survey, household surveys and business surveys, but rather we've tried to expand our statistics by benchmarking to the gold standard surveys and using alternative administrative or even private sources for these other things. One example being we've used some card spending statistics to get finer levels of detail in our spending statistics that we publish. And so those are some things that kind of highlight what we're doing in that regard.
Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Anya?
So at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we have two different ways that we collect data. So for many programs, we're collaborating with states to collect data in collaboration with them. So some programs are built from the states up. There are other programs, like the Consumer Price Index, that are really nationally representative samples. So that's building kind of from the top down. So the Consumer Price Index, like I said, is a nationally representative statistic. And to ensure that it reflects the experiences of our target population, we sample the geography first. So we select the largest cities to be sure that they're included in our underlying surveys. And then we stratify the rest of the country to try to select representative cities to include in our surveys. So we produce our national CPI, that's what you all see in the headlines every month when it comes out. And we also produce lower level geography data that's supported by how we stratify our sample. So we produce census region level estimates. We also produce census division level estimates. And where we can, we produce MSA level estimates. But we can't drill down to local areas in all the cities where we collect. The sample size just doesn't support that. But that's what our users want. So it's a big challenge. Another area where we face customer requests is for state level estimates. So the way we stratify our sample, we're not thinking about the political boundary of states. For the BLS programs where we're collecting at the state level, it makes sense. It's very easy to construct state level estimates. However, for our survey where we're working with CBSAs, you think about DC, it crosses 3 states. So we're not really sampling thinking from a state perspective. Additionally, for the areas where we select that are representing not just that city, but other cities as well, we easily cross state boundaries there. So we could have a city where we're collecting in Florida, but that's been chosen to represent a city in South Carolina. So we do have a research project where we are basically reweighting our indexes in order to reflect the state population rather than the population they were selected to represent. Users, they're used to state level estimates in other areas, and when they want to create a cost of living adjustment or to deflate a state level series, they really want state level price indexes. So we know this is a user demand, and we've been working to produce research products to meet that user demand. But it is a challenge when you have your headline number is the national estimate to try to get down to that granular level. And I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, thanks, Anya. So before Bethany, you jump in, I want to put a pin in something that I heard you say, Anya, and that I'm always interested to hear people that are producing data for census regions and divisions. And I hope we have time to come back to that later and hear if you've got any feedback from your customers about those geographies, because as geographers in the audience know, geography changes. That's one of the things about geography. So I'll leave it at that before I cause any panic in the crowd with the census geographers here. But Bethany, please, let's hear your thoughts on this. How are your evolving statistical programs to meet customer demand?
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
for hosting us today. So, the Census Bureau broadly has many statistics that, need to focus on continuity and in meeting statistical standards and those types of things. I've had the opportunity to work in a different space. I work on a modeling team. I work with a bunch of mathematicians, and we have this interdisciplinary team. We host the small area income and poverty estimates and the small area health insurance estimates. These are estimates funded by other agencies to meet a particular need. But what it means is there's this team in place that is full of mathematicians and statisticians and geographers and folks from different disciplines. And the benefit of that is that you can get these different perspectives on problems, right? And so when another federal agency or a community comes to us and they say, I know census collects some data on this thing, but I know you have it, but you're not releasing it. Then we get to jump in and come up with different ways that we might think about releasing those data. So I'm in a little bit of a different space here where we kind of have the ability to really push on being innovative. And so what we do is we have been spending a lot of time really trying to listen to our users in a different kind of way. As someone who knows the data really well, I often think I know what they should want or what we might be able to do. And so my team has taken a lot of time to think about what are they actually asking us for? What could potentially meet their need? And we work across the disciplines to be able to kind of meet those needs. And we work with a lot of mathematicians who we go to them and say, okay, here's what the data look like. Here's what people want. It's always lower level, more timely, 3 years in advance if you can do it, And so we ask them, how do we potentially solve this problem? Can we get to yes? The Census Bureau has this mechanism called experimental estimates, and that allows staff to be able to try to build something and put it out there for folks to see. And then we get comments from stakeholders about how we can improve those estimates. This is just a shameless plug for the workshop this afternoon where we'll talk a little bit about this, but it gives staff that mechanism to be able to really kind of stretch themselves and say, does this make sense? Does this potentially have utility? And so with that mechanism, we've been able to release, estimates for every tract in the United States and Puerto Rico for the community resilience estimates. We have been able to release estimates specifically for heat exposure. Soon you'll see estimates of access to air conditioning, those types of things. So that's kind of the way we have been doing it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bethany. Thank you. So kind of building on the same question, so to what extent are you adopting approaches like small area estimation, spatial modeling, or administrative data integration to extend your data to finer geographic scales? I think everybody touched on that, but where I'd like to drill in just a bit is how do you evaluate the trade-offs between spatial granularity, statistical reliability, and confidentiality to meet the customer's demands? And so how do you think about these geographic units? I know from the geographer's perspective, we'll think about nesting geographies, about the hierarchy that it's within, if there are overlaps between different geographies, and if there are any potentially disclosive issues there. But how do you think about, from a statistical standpoint, the geographies that you're producing data for? If that question makes sense. Kyle, do you want to start?
Yes, and I think for us, our concern is more often data quality than it is confidentiality when we are looking at fine geographies. But we have not really thought about the question, I think, extensively as to what happens when, could we do a small geography and then another small geography, and then the intersection of those is this tiny geography, and there's a worry that we might, show somebody, some individual or some individual company. But I understand that that is a concern, and that's certainly something that we'll have to think about. One thing that we do at BEA is, as we go to finer levels of geographic detail, we would typically offer less detail in some other respect. So for example, for county GDP, we only publish things at an annual basis, and we would typically go down to a less detailed level of industrial classification as we go down. And so there will be probably trade-offs like this that will help us ensure confidentiality of respondents. In terms of modeling in general, I think our approaches have been more limited. And just going back to the original first part of the question, usually we attempt to take higher level statistics and allocate them down to lower level geographic areas, because that is the way to keep everything consistent. And there's limited cases for modeling, but one thing we have done for modeling is actually looking at modeling flows of merchandise, because there are surveys that tell us this type of merchandise was shipped from location A to location B, but that isn't exactly the flow that we're looking for. And so we've had to develop modeling approaches to look at that kind of thing. But that's a thing that's in its infancy, and it's a research project only.
Thank you, Kyle. Anya?
So in your question, Josh, you mentioned administrative data, and really what comes to mind for me, and something we're really excited about in the Consumer Price Index, is all of the data sources that are out there that can help supplement our surveys. So we draw this representative sample, and we send out our data collectors across the country to collect prices. They're actually in stores with their tablet recording the price and then going back the next month and trying to find the same thing. So we have our wonderful survey data that we collect, but there's so much more data out there that we can use, and we have been using. So we've had great success over the last decade or so bringing in more data sources. And as we bring them in, matching them to our structure, our geographic structure, and trying to figure out how to incorporate those data has been a challenge we've had to overcome. Even working with retailers, they don't think in CBSAs. They do not send us their data demarcated exactly how we have our counties included and excluded. They're sending us their market area data. And so even just matching how retailers think about geography to how we think about geography is a challenge in and of itself. But I think it holds great promise to expand, maybe not our outputs. I'm sure the users would like us to expand our outputs, but we're really thinking about improved data quality. So you think about, we have our geographic sample, we have the cities where we collect prices. Now we're bringing in data sets, for example, for motor fuel, gasoline. We have a secondary data source that is millions of records greater than what we were ever collecting in the store. So we have not universal, but near universal coverage of gasoline prices within the cities where we collect. We also have it in cities where we do not collect and that are not included in our sample. So there's great potential to expand the accuracy and improve the geographic coverage of our data. And it's not just gasoline, it's new vehicles. We're working with retailers. So there's really a great promise to, really we're thinking about improved data quality, but maybe down the road we can get to a place where we're producing more outputs or more granular data for our users.
Yeah, that's great, Anya. And I'll just echo that comment or elevate that again. I mean, we live in geography and sometimes we miss that. And so when data is not reported at a unit that feels comfortable, that feels familiar, there can be a real disconnect. I think Bill's comments about Connecticut and his lived experience in the cities really reflects that. So it's really important for us to connect as humans, as people looking at this data, to have some personal connection with the data. And that really happens at the geographic unit, right? At the geographic level.
Yeah, the first time we received some data from a retailer and it just didn't look like how it looked for us, our researchers were, what are we supposed to do with this? This is not, give it to us in the format that we expect it to be in. And that's just not how it works.
Yeah,
So we've had to overcome that challenge.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I know that that is some of the sentiment that drives your work, Bethany, with the small area estimation and modeling and trying to get that data down to a lived experience level. Share your thoughts, please.
Sure, thank you. So we are a statistical agency and statistical standards are number one, right? And so is disclosure avoidance and privacy. And so, you know, making sure that we're meeting statistical standards, exceeding them hopefully is always, you know, a big part of the goal. In our area, again, I'm coming back to that interdisciplinary team because I think it's what's made us successful. And so you have the mathematicians and the statisticians that are putting so much effort into the statistical standards. But then on the other hand, on that team, you have subject matter expert who's saying, does that make sense? You know, this decision that you're making about the data, does that make sense? And it's a bit of a tug, and especially as we move towards like different modeling strategies and things. So that ground truth is so important. And so really our subject matter experts are, you know, really integrated with those folks building the data, asking those hard questions and coming out with like, does this make sense? Do we want to do these? Subject matter experts are also asking, what utility do these data have? You know, are we putting them out in a way that makes sense for folks? And one of the questions that I've really had to grapple with since releasing the community resilience estimates, which are often used by agencies like FEMA and the Economic Development Agency and others, we have to, they push us to release data in a certain kind of way. And I used to say, well, we can't do that for whatever set of reasons that I have. But then they do it anyway. And so, you know, they need the data a certain kind of way. And so they're going to shape it the way they need it to be. They're not going to wait for us. And that's actually how I met Josh, because I went to him and said, you know, these folks are using the data. They're doing a certain thing with it. Like, we can do it better, but it might not meet our standards. And so how do we do that? How do we think about that? And I haven't answered the question, but it's a tricky one. But I think that's something that we have to think about in the future is we have these certain standards and they're important and people expect something from the Census Bureau, high quality estimates. Then there's also a utility of things and we may be able to do better than because we have access to the microdata and we have all this expertise. But how do you balance that? So It's just the things that I think about.
Well, we are working on an answer to one of those, and that is the statistical grid that's coming out. So FYI, we will be producing a grid for the nation. It'll cover the entire CONUS, Alaska, the territories, Puerto Rico. It's going to be 1 square kilometer grid, and we are really excited. Geography Division has been working with Bethany's team to produce statistics to get some small area estimates and get some really exciting data. You'll see the grid coming out later this year, and soon thereafter we'll be producing statistics from your team. So we are meeting the challenge. We do have an answer. It's coming. And I think a lot of our users are going to be really excited about it. And I know that Kyle, you and I already had a conversation about how we might leverage some of the products that you produce in a grid in years to come. So I'm really excited about the opportunities for that. You know, not keeping people in a box. Grid, that was a grid joke. All right, it's not a very good one, but you know, allowing people to have freedom from the administrative units, the standard units that we have, and allowing them to aggregate, disaggregate, and a completely different methodology, which frankly, as geospatial folks, a lot of the audience is probably saying, what's taking you so long? Well, it was a lot of work. We're getting there. And we're really excited about the opportunity to then integrate that with a lot of the Earth observation, the satellite imagery that we've been hearing so much about, all the great data from USGS and the 3-depth. We've been working with that team to get ready for this. So we're really excited about it. So that's one of the things that we're doing. Yeah, so thanks. Okay, the next question, and this really goes right into the next question, is many federal agencies have embraced geospatial technologies for the presentation of data and introduced tools like APIs, interactive data applications, and mapping features. So how do you see geospatial visualization evolving from relatively simple map outputs toward more advanced user-driven spatial analytics platforms? Are your data users pushing your agency to move in this direction? And how can the US Census Bureau's Geography Division help? Don't get me in trouble. But we are here to help. So, Kyle?
All right, I always get to go first. No, I do want to say the statistical grid is a good segue into this topic. And it also, I was thinking about how that also might help with the confidentiality question. If you wanted a bespoke region, well, if you made sure all the grid cells were confidential, you know, past confidentiality, then you can make sure the sum does. But yeah, I think that there's a very close link between this sort of ecosystem question and the landscape that you're trying to map and geography. So we don't just have to take a map that shows a bunch of states or a bunch of counties of different colors, but we can think about it as more of a continuous landscape. And we all know what the US looks like, you know, in terms of elevation, or maybe we do, maybe you don't. But
this crowd does, Kyle.
yeah, okay. Some of us probably definitely do, but maybe not many people know what the landscape of economic activity is. And that's the kind of question that, you know, goes very well with the question of, can we get a little bit more geographic detail? It's also a very tough question to answer, and so, you know, that's sort of a long run thing. BEA has always, or not always, but for many years offered a mapping function for our subnational data. We recently released a tool to visualize some of the income distribution information at the state level, which I think people will find very interesting and people have been asking for. I think with the additional tools that we have available from you know, we're using Python. There are ways to quickly develop web applications. We can deploy these visual tools even easier now than we have before for new kinds of information. And so we have the ability to explore that. And, you know, in my group, we've been working on different ways of visualizing counties where you have 3-some thousand observations and you want to look at revisions or you want to look at growth rates. There are various different ways that we can visualize those things as a cross-sectional distributions. We've been looking at flows across states, visualizing those as lines from state to state. How exactly do you do that? These are all things that we've been working on, but I wish I could show you, but maybe that's for a later date. Thank you.
We'll bring you back, Kyle. We'll bring you back. Anya?
Right, it's hard to talk about visualizations without slides and
Visuals,
without
that's
bringing
true.
up the website, but just picture in your mind a map. Our BLS has a lot of mapping tools that we use. Data users love maps. You see a map and economic data plotted on it, and you just start telling stories in your head. So it's a very powerful tool. Many of our programs use a mapping tool to display their data, and it's really at the level of granularity as what's available in that data set. So many state products, and then you can drill down within the state to see county, and then below county in very limited cases. So we have, in terms of customization, we have maps with like lots of different options where you can toggle between which variables of interest you want to see. One feature that I really like that some programs do is to put, to incorporate time series. So have a slider, a time slider, and then there's a wonderful unemployment rate by state, and it's for the last 10 years. And so you can just click play and kind of watch the picture of how unemployment has changed over the years and at the state level. So, you think about you're watching this story play out, and then all of a sudden COVID hits and you see the whole country is impacted. All the states are impacted all at once. And then the recovery varies. It's different state by state depending on what's going on. And so you get to see that picture with this interactive map. In terms of customization, letting users define what areas they want and what they want to see, that's much more limited. So, we really don't get down to very granular levels with most of our data where that would be possible. One place where we have kind of ventured away from political boundary maps is with flood zones. So we have, as Bill mentioned, the quarterly census of employment and wages is a huge data set of nearly all employers. And so we know things like employment, wages, and so users, maybe it harkens back to Katrina times, I'm not sure when we started these maps, users wanted to see, well, in various flood zones, what is the impact? What's the economic impact? How many businesses are there? What is the earnings in that area? And so we have maps where you can drill down and see within the county, according to the flood zones as defined by FEMA, what is the employment and wages. So we have that for named storms. You can go to the BLS website under the QCW program and you can see those flood zone maps. So that's an example of where we've been responsive to demand for a different kind of flavor of geography other than just those political geographies.
Yeah, that's great, Anya. And I, again, want to highlight something that you said about disasters being impetus for change. A lot of times that's where we really see a lot of innovation. Sadly, that's the driver of a lot of innovation that we see. Zan Fredericks of USGS yesterday had a great presentation about all of the innovation that USGS and their colleagues have been doing in the same space. And Bethany, I know that's been a driver for a lot of the work that you've been doing. I don't know if you want to pick up on that or stick with the visualizations, because you have some of the flagship visualizations here at the Census Bureau.
So again, we're in small area modeling, so smaller is our game. So we release some estimates, county, tract, school district level. So these are pretty small geographies. You have to have maps, and the cartographers at the Census Bureau are the best. Josh threatened to tell me where their offices are earlier, and they might not be able to get rid of me. But there are some really cool tools that come out of Census, and Rome, I'm just going to say, is one of the coolest, but also our other tools. I just have to say that because I hear about it all the time. People say, "Oh, do you get to work on that too?" So check it out if you haven't seen Rome. But so you have to have the visualizations, especially when you're producing small area estimates. We are really good at producing statistics in our area, and we would often, like FEMA would call us. So we're part of the team that the census liaison officers who deploy to the National Response Coordination Center when there's a disaster. And so when I first started going there, I would like send them CSVs of things, and of course with 3 pages of technical documentation on why like my statistics may not be perfect for their need. And they were like, all right, you know, we're in response mode, so give us what we need and in the way that we need it. And what we learned when we were there is everybody is mapping, right? There's like 150 agencies there, and they're all mapping everything. And so the data need to be in a way that can happen quickly, and that they can get some utility out of it. So again, that's where we're balancing. How do we deliver the data and create the data that have a high statistical standards? So you have to map. Heck, you even need to do videos, and we have these data gems and things like that to walk things through. I think the user base is changing, and there's also a push that like you shouldn't have to be a really rich community in order to use census data. And so sometimes a community that their sheriff is the only person paid to respond to a disaster, and that sheriff has to like ask for resources using census data. Maybe he or she doesn't have any data scientists, and they're trying to pull data from APIs really, really quickly. And so one of the things that we've done, another shameless plug for Chase's presentation later today, is to create tools where all the data that they might need to make those requests are in one place. So you imagine a disaster comes in, the sheriff has to now focus on something else. Okay, the data that I might need to make the request to either declare a disaster here or to do something else, it's in one spot. Some person at Census has put this all in this place for me. And of course, we work really closely with the agencies to make sure we're pulling the right data. But that's some of what we're doing, is making sure those maps have what users might need in them. So really a lot of very niche types of things coming out, like boutique, but sometimes they're just pulling publicly available data, but having them in one space is the most important thing.
Yeah, thank you, Bethany. I am going to skip a bit, just given time. There are a couple of questions I really want to get to. And one is, with declining survey response rates and increasing pressure on traditional data collection, are you leveraging geospatial methods such as small area estimation, spatial data integration, or change of support techniques to compensate for data gaps? Is your agency moving to adopt geospatial approaches in your future statistical production systems? And why don't we start with Anya this time, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So yes, there is work on small area estimation going on at BLS, of course. One area that I think geospatial analysis, where we can do more with as we collect more data sets, like I already talked about, is just defining our stratification. So trying to figure out which cities to price in. It's important to know, well, what are the determinants of price change? Does it really matter the size of the city or the rurality or who lives there, or determining the price determinants of price change, and also spending estimates, because that's an input into the CPI. It's a really critical component of what we do. And having more data and better analysis of what are the drivers of price change, that helps us with our sample selection. It also helps us with operations, because with declining response rates, we have to work harder to get every response. And so is it worth our data collectors' time to be driving all over the city in order to get the prices that we've asked? Or can we leverage some information about kind of the price movements within the city to cluster our sample in a way that's more operationally effective? So there's tons of opportunity out there to use geospatial analysis to better understand how do we kind of optimize our sampling so that we are maintaining our representativity, and also how are we being as cost effective as possible when we're sending data collectors out. So those are some areas where we're thinking about kind of how geospatial analysis can help us in the future. I mean, definitely small area estimation and thinking about how to maybe model some of our estimates where response is declining more. That's an area of future research for sure. It's nothing that we've included in our official, at least for the consumer price index, in our official statistics to date. But definitely a lot of a place for collaboration for sure.
Great, thank you. Can I get everybody to pull the mics closer? We're getting word from the tech folks that they want us to be a little closer to the mic. Thank you very much. Bethany, if you've gathered your thoughts, declining response rates, what are we doing? What's the geospatial solution?
So Census has been working on small area estimation for over 20 years. Some of the major developments methodologically have come out from here. Part of that is we have the benefit of having a lot of data, microdata that people can use. So yes, we have the expertise. We also have the data, which helps you develop more expertise. But there's been an investment here, and I think that in the last, so I've worked in small area for, I'm going to say about 15 years, and in the last 5 years, there has been more of a taste for synthetic estimates than there used to be. And part of that might be disclosure avoidance and privacy concerns. And so I'm going to kind of say what I want on the question, which is we need to design surveys to think about modeling in advance of fielding the survey, because then we could do a better job modeling after if we've thought about that we're going to do it in advance. So sometimes now we take the survey data and we work on it after, but it was never intended for modeling, and so there's some things we have to overcome. And so I think we can do that more efficiently as we move forward, knowing that this is going to be what we're going in. We have major investments in, understanding unit level models and area level models. And smaller domains almost always mean geography. Like small area really means like small domain. And it could be that you want like different classifications of cells, but almost always it means smaller level of geography. So that's my take.
Yeah, thank you, Bethany. And Kyle?
Yep. Is it close enough? All right. So this is a really interesting question to me. I think BEA is, a lot of people think of us as like another data provider, but we're more of a data user. And usually if I'm trying to speak sort of concretely about things, I say what we publish are statistics and what we use are data. And so we rely very heavily, as I mentioned before, on household surveys, on census, on establishment surveys. And if we start doing a lot of modeling with that, and then census is doing modeling, then it's going to be like models on top of models. It's going to be models all the way down. And so, we hope that at least at the very concrete dates where we have the economic census every 5 years and that kind of thing, that we can get, that we can use those data and take them as given and say, these are the gold standard for us. And then we can move on and do our thing. And, there's no way that any kind of modeling or information gathering that we can do can supplant any of that information that census is providing. If we're using alternative data, if we're using administrative data, none of these are really designed to capture the population in as careful a way as census has done. And so we need to rely on that. There are some things that we do that we use models to help out with. We use models to get price indices for our subnational statistics, in particular for housing and owner equivalent rents, and for other prices where there's doing some hedonic modeling. We have looked into using AI-based tools. I mean, everybody says AI. AI is good at dealing with language, but it's also good at dealing with images. That's probably not news to anybody here. And so we have looked into developing our infrastructure a little bit to try to do that. But again, this would be for sort of BEA specific kind of tailored imputation of, you know, suppressions or missings or areas where we don't see it, and not really wholesale replacement. Yeah.
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, a couple points there I wanted to pick up on. And one, I'm gonna throw a curveball, so I'll just give you a heads up. I realized this morning I did not have a question about the elephant in the room, the hottest of hot topics, AI. So I'm gonna ask in just a minute about how AI is used, how you are employing AI within your agency. But before we do that, I wanted to pick up on one point in terms of, or maybe I'll start the conversation in terms of from a geospatial data, a geographer perspective. I think it's a little bittersweet seeing the AI, the rise of AI, because many of us, and especially the remote sensing community, we kind of say, well, wait, imagery classification, automated change detection, we've been doing that for decades. What is this new hot thing that everybody's talking about? We've been doing that. Like, welcome to the party, everybody. But that's what we're using it for today still, and we're refining that. And that's what, you know, AI in the census, as Ron said, you know, we're really using that to detect change. Administrative records are good, but there's often a lag, and we can't always wait for that administrative record to work its way through the bureaucracy and make it to us. Sometimes we can actually more quickly look at imagery, detect change on the landscape, and then react to that, whether that's to send a data collector out to that new housing unit or to contact that locality and get that new address. So those are some of the ways that we're using AI. The other thing I wanted to, before we pivot to AI, was pick up on another point that you made, Kyle, that I think is really important. And this group, with maybe the exception of Bethany, I mean, what we produce are foundational data and statistics for the nation. And sometimes when we talk to our private industry counterparts or in other agencies, our data users, they'll push us and say, oh, get more innovative, and you know, why are you so slow in change and adopting new techniques? And I completely agree with you, Kyle. There is a level at which we need to be very conservative. We need to be very slow. We need to be that boring foundational data set that's produced so that people like Bethany can then come and think of innovations with that and kind of springboard off of that and think of new ways of, you know, integrating that data together. And yet at the same time, we do need to innovate. We do need to keep up with the times. And so that fine balance is really difficult. I know internally that's a debate that we often have within the Census Bureau, within Geography Division. How much change is enough to keep up with the times and satisfy our data users, and how much is where we're starting to break continuity, where we're having an actual break in our data set that's to the point where, you know, it may be unrecoverable. We're not at that point, no worries, but it is the debate that we have. And Kyle, I see you nodding. I don't know if you have any thoughts other than, yeah, okay. Okay, well then why don't we pivot right to AI? So I don't know if Bethany, you want to lead us off with just what we're doing and just how we're thinking about it, where we're going with it, where you would like to go with it?
Well, I can speak to my team specifically.
And Bethany,
So
can you
it's a big question.
pull the mic closer?
Closer.
Sorry. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I can speak to my team and what they're doing. So again, we're in the area where we spend a lot of time modeling. And so we have a new tool coming out, hopefully next month, pretty sure next month, and it uses cross-survey modeling. So we're going to classify that under AI so I can answer the question. And basically the idea is you have, the way we're doing it, we have one survey that has a lot of rich information. So in this case, the American Housing Survey has a lot of information on air conditioning. You know, do you have air conditioning in your house and that kind of thing. The American Community Survey has a really nice sample and is representative. And so we use cross-survey modeling to say, okay, if the people in AHS were to answer the question in ACS, how might they have answered? And there's a lot that goes into that particular question, but the idea is some of these methods allow for coming up with statistics. Tricky part is census hasn't really released data like this before. So how does one review it? What statistical standards do you follow? So this effort is really kind of breaking some ground and hopefully trailblazing a little bit for what's going to happen in the future. We'll find out.
Thank you, Bethany. And Anya, I'm afraid we're going to have to be brief, but I want to hear your answers. And if you could pull the microphone a little bit closer, I would appreciate it because I want everybody to hear your response. Thank you.
Sure. So AI is a broad umbrella, right? Everyone's talking about generative AI today, but really AI includes large language models and all sorts of techniques that we have been using for a long time. So we've been leveraging AI for a number of years to help us with classification problems and data labeling. But going back to your disclosure question, we have to be super careful about what we do and how we're protecting the data that's collected under our CIPC pledge. So treading lightly and making sure everything is very secure before we move forward with Gen AI.
Yeah, thank you, Anya.
Yeah, and I actually think this cross-survey modeling is a really interesting question because I've worked on that a little bit in some of our experimental stuff, and I want to kind of ask some questions about it because we don't have everything at the subnational level, and there are some things that some surveys have, but they don't tell you what state people live in. So I personally have adopted AI because I'm mid-career. I can't sit on my laurels. And so I need to figure out what it is everybody's doing. I think we are using AI for a lot of things that we've been doing already, like development. I mean, that's basically what we all do anyway, is developing programs and running them. And so that's been pretty heavy in terms of, are we using image processing models? Are we using, nowcasting? We have bits and pieces here and there that we've used, but I would say that it's not really fully developed yet, and we have a long way to go. But we are embracing it. We're trying to figure out how, again, we can safely use it with data that are what do you call CUI data of various types, but we are going forward with that.
Excellent. Thank you, Kyle. I want to thank the panel. Thanks, everybody. And thank you all. It was great. And Eddie and organizers, I think there's going to be a 15-minute coffee break, but I think we've already queued up a workshop for next year. Our three agencies will have some nice applications, visualizers, and we'll do the whole mapping part. So we'll get to it next year. Come back next year, folks. We'll have another great panel session. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks for being a great audience. Thanks, everybody.
Well,
just
I
by
know, but I
saying
mean,
hello, but
no. So she's gonna
Yeah.
be presenting on Chase.
fantastic. No, this is right? This is so and I have no idea right now. Right? Like, and that's why it's amazing we're still running. Thank you so much. That was great. And else,
You don't realize like.
well, here, people just do that.
Yeah. It's funny that you.
Wait. Yeah, you can either stand here or you can grab the clicker and a microphone and walk around. Or if you want to use this stand, we can move the stand forward for you to use later. Let's see. I don't know if I got to shake your hand yesterday or not.
And all the data you're looking at.
So I get it.
Your data will and specifically location that is precise for you, like top of black, and all the cachers, the app. That's already. That's not really.
Not at all.
Unless you need to go less. Yeah. That's not. Yeah. You get data directly. We also get cast like user data. People that need to trust data in remote areas. But that's really not. Totally cool. Thank you. By the way, you did a great job. Some people love doing that stuff. I thought it was it's funny whenever I get and I actually asked the guy about this. Dave Harden was the relationship when it comes to the water topic and AI accreditation. Like, how is the partnership system shop is it AI use case to get them to buy offline? Is there a lot of push and pull, or is there a streamlined process in place?
It's running the afternoon. There's not a uniform.
That's true.
No, actually, the AO, you have.
Are they going to be back up?
Yeah.
Not likely. I think these are reporting and presentations. No, but hers is pointing down too low. Yeah. I would have to raise it up a little bit. I think that would have helped. Well, this one was the second one, yeah. Well, I gave you the other one. But this, we're just going to aim it out and see if that works. But for the most part,
You can do a sound check right now. You're recording it.
it's technically still live.
I'll take the hit if there's some. Mic check 1, 2, 3. Mic check 1, 2, 3.
Well, it's a distance issue.
I think so. Okay.
The irony, right?
Okay.
Just get it fixed.
So, like, if you do you want these?
That one actually might would have garbled up. Yeah. Special point out something. These are the wrong rooms. Those
Yeah.
Well, this is a really good question. So they probably
Yeah, it's interesting. So we spend a lot of time on that security space, and biggest block right now to build AI getting system shops. They got a moratorium on literally coming out of the wood. Yeah, and then your culture's.
These are the.
Yeah.
That was all, it's all about brand. That is so. That is so
That's a good one.
well,
Yeah, I'm usually like.
so economic.
Yeah, and we were in. And I was in the middle of the farm. A lot of their speakers how do you just it was for the elevated yeah. A lot of their speakers
Well, there's
were
there's so many.
and they would have we have Joanne from NASA.
I don't know, that's why I wanted to ask, because I just don't know.
So many times that was always going on. And always like devastation. Like, oh, my market here is higher than the actual house. What am I going to do?
They're the over.
And now they put days on it. Now they're fixing so like, like I could be in a kindergarten class using my brush my eyes. So I saw so much like so that I wasn't sure. I wasn't like I wasn't. Anyway, I was. What I remember from this areas the challenge because they didn't know tribes, weddings, even like fire chiefs were there. Because it's there, I was like, it's a small job. It was just there. We ended up having so much for them. So even though it was adult, sometimes you can get a little job, but there was just no problem because it was so small. I remember all this people who made them. There's no fire chiefs for whatever reason. Greg just coming to quarantine and we don't have to have a patient. So if you make sense that they're all, it's definitely and they're all, it is. Just use that. Tell your story. The stories and even there's a way to when it comes to this areas
Just like, just make sure you're like.
Not just on the show, other people plus minus. I've heard of that.
Well, they don't trust the government.
Especially Hi, Zach. Very
We're going to go ahead and get started here in just a few minutes, so if you want to find your seats again, that'd be great. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yay, you're still here. My name is Maggie Colley, and I have the pleasure of introducing the next and final round of speakers for this morning. I want to remind everyone to stick around after lunch for the unconference, and if you have other ideas on what you want to talk about after all of the talks today might spur some ideas, so don't hesitate to put those ideas up on the board. All right, so first up on this line of wonderful speakers, we've got Jesse Osborne, data scientist at the National Alliance for Public Safety, GIS Foundation. And just bear with me, I've got to switch through a lot of presentations, so. Technology. All right, we're good. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Maggie. How's my audio? Good? All right, great. Start off just thanking the FedGeoDay conference organizers for the opportunity to talk today about a project near and dear to my heart. Me and two other brilliant part-time interns have been working for almost a year now on this project that we call LINK. Stands for the Local Infrastructure Network Knowledge. It's primarily for practitioners across the public safety community to gain a better understanding of the infrastructure within their jurisdictions, how it operates, all the different interdependencies across different sectors, and what happens as a cascading impact if one asset is disrupted. How does that affect things downstream? So as Maggie had welcomed me, I'm a data scientist that supports the National Alliance for Public Safety GIS Foundation. We are a 501c3 nonprofit formed about over 20 years ago. Thousands of members, all free membership. Everything that we do is actually free. Our main objective is to empower the public safety community with geospatial tools, advanced technology, so that they can do their jobs better. So do we have anybody within the public safety community across all disciplines, public health, fire departments, law enforcement, anybody that works in utilities and infrastructure? All right, I see maybe a trace of a percentage here. We're all GIS geeks. Hey, I'm with you. But I think we should all be saying thank you for this community, for what they do day in, day out, especially when things go south and these guys pick up the slack. So I'm going to start off just kind of laying the foundation, the problem space that we're trying to develop for. When an emergency manager, somebody within the public safety community has to do a job, they have a disaster occurring in their neighborhoods, there's a need to be able to understand what it is in their neighborhood, what it does for the neighborhood, and how it might be, that neighborhood might be affected if that thing were no longer there. So as an example, say you have a wildfire encroaching from the west, And it's estimated as it's going to be taking out a water pump out in the middle of a golf course. You know, what is that lift station connected to? How might that affect the only hospital with a trauma center just down the street? How might that affect the water treatment plant that's 5 miles in the other direction? As far as current tools, there's not much by way of what's available. So we're trying to answer the call. And this has been a persistent problem, longstanding for over the course of my entire career, at least. And I have dedicated some number of years to helping manage the critical infrastructure problem at the federal level. But it's almost kind of like trying to boil the ocean. You know, there's just so much infrastructure across all sectors, from energy to water, wastewater, telecommunications, transportation. To be able to bubble that up and aggregate it at the national level is a very, very difficult problem. And so, not to take anything away from the existing systems, but those systems are often not offered to the locals, to the public safety community that has a job to do within their neighborhood. Oftentimes, because of the criticality and whether or not the assets have a national significance, that data is hidden from the public locals behind classification walls, and it's not accessible unless you're a vetted individual. So what we're trying to do is put together a easy to use system to gain a better understanding of how all those puzzle pieces are fitting together, because it's a very difficult problem, because most of those puzzle pieces are actually owned and by private entities. So trying to get a fuller picture of the puzzle when you don't have all the puzzle pieces is a very tough problem. And so that's where Link comes in. So I've heard a few speakers here within the last day or so talk about meeting the user where they are. We're all GIS experts, as my previous volunteer question pointed out. And we probably use a lot of GIS applications. We're not scared of them. When we're presented with a lot of different buttons, we're not shy. They're not intimidating to us. But when we're talking to the public safety community that has expertise in domains where, you know, in GIS and databases and AI and things of this nature, you know, it's not second nature. And so those applications don't often get used because of the intimidation factor. So we want to meet the user where they are, present to them the information in a way that is easily and clearly presented. And Link, as we're developing it, has a few unique advantages that differentiate itself from existing systems. And I'll show you in the next slide a quick demonstration of kind of what I'm talking about here, but just to list them off. Again, this is free and soon to be open source software. No technical expertise needed. The AI agent that is within the application has deep infrastructure knowledge, really based upon its data model and the data that you're providing it. One of the burdens that Link helps alleviate is modeling the data and all of its, how those different supply chains and all the different sectors might be arranged. And it also helps make those predictions that this thing might be connected to that thing based on close geographic proximity. And finally, one of Link's unique advantages is not forcing the locals to think about infrastructure in terms of nationally defined definitions. So when we talk about critical infrastructure, we're talking about a very specific thing with a very specific definition, and that carries also a lot of baggage. When locals look at their infrastructure, they might not fit under that definition. It might be very significant to them depending on their perspective. And it allows, Link allows people to take a look at their infrastructure and how these things might be weighted against population impact and public health, how it might be related to economic loss, like the earlier board was talking about today. It helps make those predictions as to how relevant those infrastructure assets are to the neighborhood's livelihood. So I'm gonna play a quick demo just to kind of give you an idea and stop talking about this thing in abstract, right? Just how easy it is to quickly get answers. So this is a user just signing into Link. You're presented simply with, hey, ask your question, taking a page out of Google and OpenAI's playbook, right? Can you show me all of the power substations? And underneath the hood in a knowledge graph, there's data throughout the Arapahoe County in Colorado. You get a textual response with key property values over in the chat log. But more importantly, we're actually showing the data with a network graph, showing the data on a map, so you can get that geographic context around where these things are located and being able to drill in a little bit more. So asking a follow-up question, which one of these are connected to hospitals? It further subsets the original query to just those substations that have predicted relationships to hospitals. We're going to drill into the medical center of Aurora here. You can see it on the map. And furthermore, all the lines connecting these different entities within the network graph are just as important as the circles. Those have properties too. And so you can see that there's a physical distance of about 426 meters just across the street here, a power substation that is most likely serving that hospital. So it was talked about earlier that, you know, it's hard to ask these communities that have so much at stake to adopt new things. They move slowly, they have to be right, and accuracy is at the top of their list. And so how we're trying to earn the trust of the public safety community is through actually showing the data. So when they ask a question, you know that it's not something that has been something that the agent made up or hallucinated, but that there is data tied to that answer, and everything that that corresponds with the response is displayed as tangible data that you can interactively interrogate. One of the big takeaways I want people to understand about Link is it's not a data store, so you're not putting your data into Link. You can think of it more as the analytical layer, the reasoning that provides the logic around your data. But what it's doing is it's just storing the credentials that you provide it to where the data might live so that it can reach out to where that data resides using LLMs, commercial LLMs, manipulate that data to get that response and pull that back in. Now, there might be some artifacts of that data that are being pulled back into Link, but the user has full control and autonomy to delete that if needed. I could probably talk another 15 minutes about the data model, and I'd love to, but with time constraints here, I'm going to keep you out of the rabbit hole and stay at the surface. The left-hand side of this graphic really just speaks more towards all of the different supply chains across all the different sectors, how the agent is more informed about how those products are being generated and distributed to the community. Also, the geo-enrichment of all of the data. The right-hand side is also very important because this is how the agents are informed about how emergency response responds to disasters and thinks about infrastructure. There's a variety of different ontologies, standards, taxonomies about that characterize infrastructure in a lot of different ways. We're not forcing anybody to adopt any one particular standard. What we're actually doing is we're taking all of the known authoritative standards and intermingling them so that when you pose a question and use the term water tower, if the data might be stored as an elevated storage tank or a water ellipsoid, it knows what it's talking about because the text vector embeddings that are within the linked data model aren't on the terms that people use. It's on the underlying functional purpose behind all of the infrastructure. So this allows Link to use semantic similarity. I'll keep you out of the terminology of AI, but basically if somebody says something and it kind of means a particular thing, it'll identify all of those different infrastructure assets that have similarity to it. I'm almost close on time here, so I'll keep this short. Link, out of the box, we're providing you an open source data set that's been assembled from infrageomatics, and it's primarily the energy and water wastewater sectors. And that is provided to users right out of the box. With the deprecation of Highfield, that's been a sad story, but we were able to rescue maybe a couple of things here and there. I'm very interested about the rescue project that was talked about yesterday, including some of that as well. But basically what we're doing is we're getting the data and then we're handing it to our users, and the users are now responsible for that. They can add to it, they can modify it, they can delete things if they're no good. And so becoming a Link user is easy as 1, 2, 3. Just send us an account request. We'll give you the data and what you need to get started. And with your Link account, you can jump right in. Okay, so my time is up. Buzzer sounded. Contact me or contact the project manager, Kevin. There's my information. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And yeah, we'll have time at lunch if you want to ask Jesse any questions. Great, thanks. Next up, I'd like to invite Reed Van Beveren to the stage. He's the Deputy Director for Technology at the Environmental Policy Innovation Center, otherwise known as EPIC. And Reed's going to be talking about the Open Wetlands Map. Thank you, Reed.
All right. Thank you so much, Maggie. Really excited to be here. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Reed Van Beveren. I'm the Deputy Director of Technology at the Environmental Policy Innovation Center. And I'm here to talk about the Open Wetlands Map, a collaboration that we started with OpenStreetMap US earlier this year to build an accessible, community-maintained data set of wetland observations in the United States. So, first, a few words about EPIC. EPIC is a national nonprofit, 501c3, with the mission to speed up environmental progress toward better environmental outcomes, whether that's replacing water infrastructure faster or scaling up restoration. We're a diverse group of about 50 people with skill sets ranging from designer and technologists, data scientists, to ecologists, engineers, policy experts. And collaboration is really at the core of everything that we do. We work closely with government, academia, private companies, academic institutions, and really anyone with shared goals. We're loosely organized into 4 different areas: agriculture, restoration, technology, and water, and I'm part of the tech team. So these just kind of give you a little bit of a sense of the themes that emerge in our work, but really you can think of us as a nonprofit startup that likes to pilot and test unconventional ideas. So those can range from alternative financing for conservation projects all the way to providing effective technical assistance to local communities that want to replace their lead pipes, and also extends to prototyping new data and tools that we think should exist in the world. So I want to start with the why question, because I think it's important. Right, the reason that I'm here speaking to you today is because wetlands are important. They're actually a bit of a Swiss Army knife in terms of environmental outcomes. And really, they have so many different benefits for our communities. They slow down water, they stabilize stream banks. You know, the estimates of the benefits in terms of flood mitigation are in the trillions globally. They're key habitat for all sorts of species, and including a disproportionate number of listed species. This also makes them a magnet for recreation. And I know actually that the protected wetlands near my house are some of my favorite places to bring my kids. They also play an important role in water filtration and groundwater recharge. Wetlands in some places can recharge aquifers up to 1,000 times faster than surrounding areas. So they're really, really important. We know that. And so we wanted to, we have some important questions about wetlands, right? So we wanted to bring these questions to the forefront. So, for example, one of the things that we really care about as a policy organization is tracking progress towards no net loss of wetlands. But right now we can't do that because there's no national map, comprehensive, up-to-date national map of where wetlands are. And so we can't answer these questions here. We can't answer where are wetlands comprehensively, where are they protected, where are they impacted, and where are they restored. And these type of questions aren't also just for us, right? These are important questions for a variety of folks. You know, we talked yesterday about all the benefits that data brings to communities, right? Fishermen want to know where they can find certain species of fish near wetlands. Wetland managers need to know where wetlands are, what habitat is being impacted so that they can plan their interventions. Communities need to know where wetlands are to plan their gray and green infrastructure projects. And so all of these questions are extremely important. And so we wanted to bring data to bear on these questions. So our starting place was really to form a community, to get our feet wet, right? So this smiling, happy person in the front of this picture is actually our senior data scientist, Emily. And she's really been the one that's been building up this community of practice around wetlands data for us for over 1.5 years. And so we've grown from a pretty small group of people that have just been passionately talking about wetlands data to a group of over 30 wetland data experts representing a variety of organizations. They're drawn from academia, technology providers, restoration practitioners, infrastructure planners, state and federal agencies. So if discussing wetland data is your thing, or this looks like your idea of a good time, we'd love to have you come join our community. And I'll show this QR code at the end for anyone that's interested in learning more. Okay, so once we formed this group, I think the first thing that we decided as a group was really that we love the National Wetlands Inventory. We absolutely love it. It's the gold standard data set that's stewarded by the Fish and Wildlife Service. And where it's up to date, it helps answer a lot of the questions that we have about wetlands. So it gets 50 million data requests per year from over 300,000 unique mappers. And as you can see, it's turning 50 this year, and we would love to see 50 more years of the expansion of the National Wetlands Inventory. But of course, every data set has its trade-offs, and I know people yesterday mentioned the trade-off between timeliness and quality, and that's really applicable here with the National Wetlands Inventory. You know, it takes time and resources to build such a rich data set. And so in the meantime, wetlands are changing even faster. And so we wanted to bring additional data to the questions beyond even just the National Wetlands Inventory. So what we did as a group is we started digging for data, and we found a lot of it. So up here, we have the National Wetlands Inventory in kind of the center on the top left, and then a whole constellation of different federal efforts that generate data on wetlands. You have the EPA's National Wetland Condition Assessment. You have the the Fish and Wildlife Service Status and Trends. You've got the NOAA Coastal Change Analysis Program. Down in this quadrant, you've got the innovative mapping approaches in the private sector, right? Remote sensing, different types of modeling of wetland locations. You've got academic research, you've got citizen science, of course. You've got state wetland inventories. And then over here, you've got this whole constellation of permitting related data. So you've got, you know, pre-permitting data that's used for siting developments. And that flows into all these permitting processes. So you've got, for example, Army Corps public notices that tell you something about where a wetland's being impacted. You've got NEPA documents with wetlands delineations in them. You've also got state permit trackers. And then you kind of flow into some of the restoration efforts. So you've got mitigation banks where practitioners restore wetlands and then sell the credits to developers. You've got land trusts and conservation easements that are gathering data. And you've got government land managers as well that are collecting data all the time about places like national wildlife refuges. But what we discovered in going through this exercise, and we have a lot more detailed information behind this if you're interested, but the main conclusion is that a lot of these are single use, right? They're not reused, they're not available, they're not accessible. And so we've kind of labeled them as all going into this data void. And so that is where the idea for an open wetlands map came from, right? And so the open wetlands map, what we really wanted it to be is open and accessible so that it can serve the many use cases that we see for wetlands data. We wanted it to be collaborative and flexible to incorporate data from the many sources that I just described. We wanted it to be community maintained to make it responsive to the increasing pace of change and engage new audiences. And we wanted it to be complementary to the high quality existing data sources out there. And so that's why we're focusing the open wetlands map really on field observations as opposed to modeling of wetland locations. And then building all of this on OpenStreetMap and with Maggie's team at OpenStreetMap US was really an easy decision for us because it really hit all the notes that we wanted. All right, so what is the open wetlands map? What are we actually building? So one, we're updating the tagging system in OpenStreetMap, and that's an active area for us right now. The wetlands map viewer is intended to be a new way to explore wetlands in OpenStreetMap. We're doing mapping guidance, and we know that there are some unique challenges associated with mapping wetlands, like seasonality that we're gonna have to grapple with through that process. And then of course, data validation and upload tools is a really big piece of this as well, because we want to be able to take advantage of all those different data sources and make sure that we can validate it as much as possible. So this is all going to lead to a regional pilot in the near future. Wetlands are already in OpenStreetMap, right? OpenStreetMap already has 820,000 wetland polygons in the United States. This is a map of the closest wetlands to where we are right now. So if anyone is interested in visiting it after FedGeoDay, I've given you a head start here. And then there is a tagging system already in OpenStreetMap that's really closely mirrors the way that EPA classifies wetlands into swamps, marshes, bogs, and fens, and then has some additional information about tidal, managed, seasonal, but it's fairly limited. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our efforts to create a new tagging system. One of the challenges that we're grappling with in building this open wetlands map is that there are a variety of classifications out there. The Cowardin system is what the National Wetlands Inventory uses, and it's hierarchical. It has a lot of information in it, like vegetation type, really tells you what what a wetland looks like. You've got the Army Corps has their own classification standard that really gets to the function of wetlands and has things like water flow path, relationship to the surrounding landscape, and water bodies. And there's a whole bunch of other classifications as well. IUCN, which is kind of the global classification, and that's relevant to OSM because it's global in nature. And we also wanted the tagging system to be able to handle things like geolocated photos so that we can include participatory science efforts. And so how we're thinking of the data that would go into the open wetlands map is really as a gradient from kind of like basic observations all the way to more detailed observations. And you can see that we've got a different, we're pretty confident that there are a lot of different applications across that kind of gradient. But one of the great things about OSM is really that a variety of people can work on that same observation and improve it over time. And so how we're kind of thinking about this a little bit in a tongue-in-cheek way is, over there you have basic data. You could think of that like grape juice, right? It's delicious on its day and in the right circumstances. And then over here you have these observations that are kind of aging into like a fine wine, right? Like a complex, rich wine with many notes. And so as information is added, it gets to a much more detailed observation. And so we'll be continuing to work on this over the next few months. Okay, so where I want to end is really about the benefits of building an open wetland data ecosystem. And people have mentioned ecosystem several times today and yesterday. And we really see it as having cascading benefits, quite literally here. In starting the open wetlands map, we'll start gathering some data, and really at first it might just be an indicator of where there's rapid change, and maybe a little bit of extra training and validation data for ongoing efforts. But over time that can spill into more targeted investments in better data. And then you also kind of have this piece of collaboration, education and training, awareness, engagement, participation that all kind of comes with open data. That in turn can spill over into better applied research, right? You have more training, more participation, and that applied research is really applicable to local decision-making, right? Local investment, policy change, and then coming back over here with targeted investments in data, that can lead to better modeling of wetland locations and more frequent updates to the NWI. Both of those support improved siting, planning, and permitting decisions. And then we get to kind of this benefit for communities at the end, right? So we have accessible information for communities so that they can understand how their wetlands are changing. There are no surprises for developers because they have information about wetlands in their development cycles very early, so they can avoid impacts and avoid costs. We have efficient restoration and mitigation because we know where to anticipate development and proactively restore wetlands. And then we have a map on which to base green infrastructure improvement decisions, right? Communities need to know where the existing green infrastructure is to be able to make those investments. And so like a waterfall, we really see this as a beautiful thing. And so that's where I'll leave it. I think we'd love to work with all of you to build this together. If you're interested in connecting with us, I'd love for you to take 2 minutes to just tell us a few things, how you interact with wetlands or wetlands data. any feedback you have on the concept of the open wetlands map, and we have some structured ways to get involved in that as well. And then whether you want us to communicate with you about opportunities related to the wetlands map. So really appreciate the time, and hope to connect with many of you after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Reed. And again, a reminder about the unconference. If you feel like talking about wetlands, fine, Reed. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Justin Rice to the stage, Deputy Manager of the ESDIS Science Systems Development Office at NASA. And we'll hear lessons from the front line. So, Justin, the stage is yours.
Good morning. Can you hear me? All right, I'll say this again. Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, my goodness, I need some energy. My name is Justin Rice. I am the Deputy Project Manager of Data Systems at the Earth Science Data and Information Systems Project Office up the street at NASA Goddard. And as Nadine mentioned, Dr. Nadine yesterday, she mentioned, we have gold, actually a lot of gold. And Katie Baines also mentioned how much gold we have. We have about 150 petabytes of gold. Now, this gold is not just in one place though. It's all over the place, right? Historically, it's been in different states, physical states. The gold is in different states, right? We have some gold in Tennessee, some gold in Alaska, right? Some gold here in Maryland, right? And now we're moving to the cloud. The gold is in different S3 buckets, right? Now, what do we do with this gold being in different places? Do we just hand our users a treasure map and say, well, for this particular piece of gold, thou shalt go to US West 2 and find, and there in this bucket, you shall find atmospheric data? No, that's not quite what we do. Oh, not that bucket, this bucket. You want it in a different space, a different time. It's not that bucket, it's this bucket. Oh, you want it in this different format? It's not that bucket, it's this bucket. No, we don't do that. We actually have something called the Common Metadata Repository. Say it with me, Common Metadata Repository. Again, we're gonna say it again, Common Metadata Repository. That's what we have. So although the gold is distributed in different places, we have something called the Common Metadata Repository that presents this gold as one, like it's coming from one place. So the user doesn't care. They just want their gold. Give it to me. All right, they ask the CMR through his API and they get the gold. Now, we're talking about building ecosystems, right? Oftentimes we come to these types of forums and we exchange a lot of ideas and we get really excited. And then we go back to our lives at our respective agencies and nonprofits and things of that nature. I was here a few years ago when we talked about open source software, right? And things needing to be open. And I was on a panel. Well, I'm here again today to report we actually collaborated with NOAA for them to use our Common Metadata Repository and the lessons learned from that collaboration. I want to thank Eddie Pickle for organizing this, for getting us all back together again this year, and for the organizing committees. This has been a great meeting so far. I'm not gonna even talk about it. You know what? I don't even like slides. Here's what this thing is in a nutshell, right? Before the developers can develop, the lawyers need to lawyer. And oh, lawyering they will, right? And before the lawyers lawyer, the leaders need to lead. They need to meet. They need to define. They need to scope. They need to document. So we just don't say, hey, this is a great thing, we should all collaborate, we want to build an ecosystem, there's a lot of things that need to happen before the developers actually get to the point where they start to develop. So here, we're saying it takes a lot of people to get these type of collaborations off the ground, right? It takes NASA and NOAA leadership, it takes team leads, and obviously it takes technical teams to do the actual work. Now, kind of mentioned CMR. Well, how many records does it have? It has 2.4 billion records. Billion with a B. That's a lot of records, right? And this is the backbone of our science data discovery. This is how the users actually find the gold. Now, these data catalogs at scale matter, right? Now, we have CMR, and I'm sure at a conference like this, I don't know where, I don't know when, somebody articulated, hey, we know you all have CMR. We actually want to take a look at it, take a peek at it, give us a demo. What can it do? We may actually want to use this in production at our agency. Now you have to think about this. These are two titans of an agency. You have NASA in one corner, you have NOAA in one corner. The developers are talking, but that's not enough to get this off the ground. You have to go back and you have to talk to somebody, and that somebody has to talk to somebody else, and it's a lot of moving parts, right? But it started with a conversation at a place just like this. So here's our lessons learned. We have to formally document. We have the formal governance matter. And this takes a lot longer and is a lot harder than you would expect it to be, right? These things matter. We started way before it was signed. So this is 2024, we're in 2026, right? So the MOU, the agreement was signed in 2024, but I'm sure we were talking maybe 6 months before that, maybe a year, right? So it takes a while to actually document and formalize what the agreement is. What's the roles and responsibilities? What are the expectations, et cetera, et cetera. Now, but while these things are formalizing, we can still have like these demonstrations to make sure NOAA says, we have an idea of what we think this is. What is it actually? Can we actually roll this out into production in our systems? So while we're waiting on the leaders to formalize things, we're having technical exchanges because we have a good idea that this could work for NOAA, and we have a good idea that we'll eventually get through this process. And so we're doing things in parallel. But we also know that we have leadership buy-in. Our leaders are committed to making this happen, right? So lesson number one, formal governance does matter. Now here's the tricky bit. Lesson two, shared vision and shared roadmaps. Now, this is not easy. We have completely different operational environments, right? Different architectures, right? And so we have to make sure that we have a good idea of where we're going. We know we can tell NOAA where we are today, but once they adopt CMR, we need to get an idea of what that shared roadmap looks like, because we're always building features in the CMR, right, that may or may not work for NOAA. Actually, these roadmaps may actually diverge if we're not careful. So we have to make sure that we're on the same page about what the future of CMR will be. So making sure that we have a shared roadmap is essential. It's not just a planning document. This is something that we will do in the future. That's lesson number two. Code convergence is critical, right? We have to make sure that these code bases do not diverge. Now, this is incredibly hard, right? We want to make sure that when we have our own operation environment, they have their own operation environment, They may want slightly different things than what we plan to do. And if these things diverge too much, the code bases diverge too much, there goes a partnership, right? Because they may start experiencing things in their code base that we can't help them with because it's not in our code base, right? And so we need to make sure that we're deliberate about making sure that these code bases do not diverge too much. Lesson number 4, we have to make sure that we innovate through collaboration. We've been talking about AI and what role that will play in the geospatial environment in the community, right? Same thing with CMR and the tools. How do we inject these different technologies into our tool sets? And in this case, in CMR. Right? So we're doing this together because that means shared investment, right? And shared benefit and shared risk. So we can spread this across 2 different agencies and we don't necessarily as NASA have to take these types of things on ourselves, the risk and the investment. We can share this across both of our agencies. And then looking ahead, lesson number 5, how do we go from 2.4 billion records in CMR to 10 billion, to tens of billions of records? We don't have the answer to that yet. We're working on it, right? Because CMR was not built for tens of billions of records. So what does the vision look like further than when we are, where the amount of records stored in CMR multiplies by 5, by 10, et cetera, et cetera. We need to be talking about the future beyond the next 2 years, 3 years with NOAA as we co-create the future. It may not even be CMR, it may be something completely different, right? And so we have to be intentional about what that may be and have that discussion. Hey, we're at the end, right? So let's talk about the lessons learned. We have to make sure you formalize the governance early. You have to build that shared roadmap. You have to guard against code divergence. You have to make sure you innovate together, and you have to really work together to think at scale. This takes a community. It's community building. We're still building ecosystems. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Great. Sped through that one. Thank you so much, Justin. This is really great work. Love to see your collaborations coming together like this. So if something happens today and you've got a story to tell in a couple of years, come back. We're diverging from the website, just so you know. So our next speaker will be Greg Hanks, the Senior Technical Project Manager at Imagine, Believe, Realize, IBR, LLC. Right.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Maggie. Appreciate you setting me up there. So again, good morning. My name is Greg Hanks. Again, as Maggie said, I'm with Imagine, Believe, Realize, LLC, or IBR. And it is a privilege this morning to provide you with a brief introduction to the Geographic Update Partnership Software, or GUPS, which is a versatile and proven open source GIS application that enables tribal, state, and local government partners to provide accurate and authoritative geospatial data for their communities in support of Census Bureau geographic partnership programs. The GUPS application is fully owned by the Census Bureau, and Team IBR is proud to serve as their development and maintenance partner. As I begin, I want to do a few acknowledgments, as has been done a couple of times this morning. First, thank you to FedGeoDay for allowing us to be part of the agenda today. It's great to be here. Thank you to the Census Bureau Geography Division for allowing us to discuss the GUPS application. Again, it's been in production for over 10 years. It's a tool that's woven into the fabric of the agency and into the fabric of how partners in the landscape provide data. So it's a privilege to be able to speak about that on their behalf. So thank you to Geography Division leadership for their approval to do this. And also thank you to the Census's Redistricting and Voting Rights Data Office for allowing us to focus in on their use case as part of our detail today. Oh, and also thank you to my IBR colleagues that made the trip to join us. So some quick background to set the stage. A couple presentations this morning have started with the question of why. So why GUPS? As a national data integrator, the Census Bureau conducts a range of geospatially themed partner data collection programs. Some are annual, like the Boundary and Annexation Survey or BASS. Others occur in staggered phases throughout each decade leading up to a decennial census, like the Redistricting Data Program. Others are one-time collections held right before a census, like the Participant Statistical Areas Program or the Local Update of Census Addresses, or LUCA. All geospatial data collected from partners is evaluated before being processed into the MAF-TIGER system, which many of you know is the Bureau's integrated in-house geospatial database and GIS. The MAF-TIGER system serves as a geospatial frame of addresses, street networks, a boundary inventory, and an imagery portfolio that are foundational for census operations and statistical products. As you can imagine, it is vital and occasionally required by law that these nationally scoped and complex geospatial data programs be accessible by every eligible tribal, state, and local government when they are conducted. However, given the incredible variety in size, in resourcing, and technical capability across the landscape of almost 40,000 different tribal, state, and local government entities, ensuring that all interested program partners have a digital way to provide their data has historically been a challenge. This is where GUPS comes in. The Census Bureau partners with IBR to provide this freely available, internet-based, and open-source GIS application that enables a governmental user to load, edit, and display geospatial data, as well as to output standardized files that the Census Bureau then uses to update the MAF-TIGER system. Once loaded into GUPS, users can manage that data for their community in one place and then also share it with the Bureau without any software or data licensing requirements. Using GUPS, users can build address lists, they can assign coordinates to structures, and they can ensure a complete and spatially accurate road and boundary network. Here's just a quick timeline to show the GUPS life cycle to date. Again, the software was launched back in 2014 as an installable standalone application, initially supporting the Boundary and Annexation Survey and the School District Review Program. In 2020, a second major version was released, which introduced the Bureau's first containerized web-based GIS application in the cloud. GUPS supported 14 separate geographic partnership program interfaces or supporting activities during the 2020 census cycle, and looks forward to supporting roughly 13 more heading towards 2030. And again, it's no secret here, but the ultimate goal being for the Bureau to eliminate the use of paper maps, still in use in some places, for all partner updates. So as the conversation across the FedGeoDay events this week has emphasized, open source is aspirational. It's a pathway to successes, savings, and innovation, and also endorsed across federal policy. At the Census Bureau, solutions like GUPS are already driving operations and delivering on the mission today. For many smaller communities across the nation, this is their only consistent access to no cost, no license agreement, and no data rights GIS software that provides immediate benefit at home and enables the secure delivery of authoritative and accurate data that is required for Census Bureau partnership programs. Here we highlight a few of the key technical capabilities from the GUPS web version. Users can access spatial geometry for the entire nation in their setting, in their usage situation. Menus can be easily customized for the unique needs of different programs. Multiple users can edit the same area at the same time. And users can import reference shapefiles of their own data and have the GUPS application perform a change analysis of the difference. To introduce you to GUPS, we'll show you a selection of screenshots to illustrate the key features and discuss them from the perspective of a user. To get us started, here is a look at the basic GUPS web interface. This view is configured to support the Boundary and Annexation Survey, or BASS, which is an annual program open to all legal governments. In this example, the Modify Area Feature tool is activated and the Fort Peck American Indian Reservation in northeastern Montana is selected for editing. Here's a closer look at the Modify Area Feature settings where we've selected a reservation trust land as our geography type and chosen to perform a legal change action specifically to add area to the selected geography. Now we can choose from a suite of standard editing and review tools available to BASS users on the left side menu. The enlarged inset shows options for modifying areas and managing linear features like roads or invisible boundaries. Now we're highlighting and enlarging a sample of various layers that you can toggle for view or editing within this data set on the left side menu. You can see aerial coverage here for reservation land, off-reservation trust land, and also tribal subdivision geographies. Here's a quick look at the tech stack, what's under the hood in terms of technology. GUPS architecture encompasses geospatial data services, cartography, geospatial administration services, develops several internal APIs and consumption of various external APIs, microservices, automated features, and other scalable tech. The primary component in GUPS is QGIS, or the Quantum Geographic Information System, open source GIS solution. Now that you've seen the basic interface and capabilities, I want to transition now to the role GUPS plays in the delivery of two highly visible and legally mandated geographic partnership programs implemented by the Bureau. First, the Redistricting Data Program, which is conducted in 5 phases. For the 2020 census, the GUPS standalone, the original 2014 version, was involved in data collection for 2 of the Redistricting Data Program's phases, about Block Boundary Suggestion Program and Voting District Program. The plan for 2030 is to include those 2 again and add a 3rd one, which is the collection for congressional district and state legislative districts. Here is a view of the original 2020 GUPS standalone application provided for the Block Boundary Suggestion Program. In the interest of time, I won't narrate what you're seeing on the screen. You can see it. Now we'll jump over to the GUPS web interface for the Block Boundary Suggestion Program, this time for the 2030 census cycle. Here we're looking at Central Falls City in Rhode Island. The Modify Area Feature tool was again activated like earlier in the BAS views. You can see the legend of visible and editable layers in that left menu. A detailed look here at which layers to display and you can enable for editing. In this example, we're showing various types of area landmarks. Here we're seeing the editing and review tools available to BBSP users shown in that left menu. Here they're similar to the BAS tools shown earlier with some BBSP specific options like the feature flagging tool and the block area grouping capabilities. Now we see the view, imagery, and selection tool options. Users can zoom, measure, and select features by various types. The imagery tools are handy. You can view Esri imagery right inside the application and also call Google Maps and Bing imagery as secondary windows. And here's a view of the street network with a blowout of the enlarged view just to show you the detail. Finally, Central Falls with the Esri imagery toggled on and a linear feature selected. You can see some BBSP specific content in the menu there like must hold block boundary and ineligible block boundary. So how did it go? For 2020 using GUPS for RDP, here we offer 2 contrasting quotes from successive versions of the View from the States report, which is produced by the Census Bureau as a participant-driven lessons learned document for the Redistricting Data Program after every decennial census. The first quote is from the 2010 census and refers to the state's use of the predecessor solution to GUPS. I'll let you read it for yourself. The second quote is from the 2020 census of the View, version of the View, and we're delighted that GUPS delivered a consistent and high quality experience for participants in such a critical and visible Census Bureau program. Second of 2 use cases, we'll take a look at the local update of census addresses or LUCA program. The Bureau relies on a complete and accurate address list to reach every residence and count every person once in the right location for inclusion in the decennial census. First conducted in 1998 for the 2000 census, LUCA satisfies a federal requirement and enables every interstate, tribal, state, and local government to review and comment on, edit the Bureau's version of the address list for their community prior to a decennial census. You can see on the screen some of the metrics from the 2020 LUCA, over 8,000 submissions, including over 22 million addresses processed, of which just over 1.2 million, 5.3%, represented new ads that were successfully enumerated during a census. Offering GUPS as a free response option for LUCA provides secure, no license access to those necessary GIS capabilities equally to all participants, which is intended to increase both the rate of participation and the quality of addresses that are received. Just one look at the LUCAS functionality within GUPS. I want to point out that we're talking about addresses here, but this screenshot intentionally does not include any address data that is protected from disclosure by the data stewardship requirements of US Code Title 13. So you're not seeing any protected data on screen, but I wanted to show you just again, a look at some of the editable data. You're seeing some layers for housing unit map spots or location structures, group quarters, and transitory location data. And how did it go? Feedback and reactions to Luca. First, from the 2020 Luca Operational Assessment Report. Again, you can read it for yourself. And then second, from the most recent 2030 Luca Federal Register Notice, where they're talking about the tools that they want to use for the next census. So again, we're delighted with the positive reception of GUPS from the Bureau and the user community. So in closing, GUPS is a proven and reliable Census Bureau solution that provides open source, no cost geospatial data management capabilities and collaboration space to any interested tribal, state, or local government user today. Key 2030 census programs like LUCA and the Redistricting Data Program will continue to rely on GUPS to enable the delivery of high-quality geospatial data. And Team IBR is proud to partner with the Census Bureau to provide this fundamental and valuable service to every American community. And that is the end of my time. Thank you all very much for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Greg. And again, if you have questions for any of these speakers, we're encouraging them to stick around for lunch as well. So please find them and ask them your questions. Next up, we have Hector Farinato, Vice President of Engineering at Reveal Global Consulting. And if you give me just a minute, I have to find his presentation. It felt like a really big win to find that. Hector, the stage is yours.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Hector Farinato. I'm Vice President of Engineering at Reveal Global Consulting. Been working with the Census Bureau as a contractor since 2019 on different projects, more specifically with the construction engineering effort at the economic division here at Census. And today we'll talk about how we're using open source and open data blended with commercial data as well to be able to help optimize the federal economic program. Oh, and as always, confidentiality and the views here are not reflected directly from Census Bureau, but the authors and the presenters. So what is the indicator we're talking about today? This is known as the housing starts. I'm sure you guys have heard one day in the news from the financial news or market news about the housing starts, also known as new residential construction. And it measures the monthly starts, construction starts in progress and completions that are happening every month across the US. The sources for that data currently are sampling from building permits, as well as physically canvassing of areas around the US. So it's a mix of people calling in, driving by, and checking the internet for, and asking the builders if the construction starts are happening or not, and aggregating that. So there are a lot of data users, so BEA, Federal Reserve, Department of Housing, manufacturers, insurance. So it's a widely used data set that's being viewed every month. And as you guys know, with a lot of the methodologies in terms of surveys, we've seen some long-term optimizations that can be done using satellite imagery, using open source technology. So we were tasked to help Census think how could that be possible, and we'll talk a little bit about the methodology today. So at a high level, we don't want to replace the field representatives or the survey methodology, but we want to complement it, optimize it. So this is a blended approach in areas where the current field representatives are being used really well and efficiently. We want to keep those. In areas where it's more efficiently to use satellite imagery and machine learning, we'd like to apply that. So it's a blended methodology to be able to estimate the monthly single-family housing starts. So we are focused on residential and single-family at the moment because that is the bulk of the data, but we have some works into expanding into multifamily and non-residential as well. So we'll talk about open source, open data. Obviously, we're using Tiger and Tigerline files. The biggest use of that in this project is on identifying the boundaries of the areas we want to task satellite imagery for. So as you can see some examples here, When we're selecting the sample that's going to be tasked every month, those images are the locations are selected based off high activity as well as distribution of types of construction. But the boundaries themselves are very complicated, so the Tiger Lines files really help us in that way. We use the shape files. And then we do have to simplify, combine, and exclude some areas using it. So we can't just use the raw files. We do some processing and then send out for acquiring the images. What are some of the images that we get? So as I said, it's a blended approach. So we do use some open data, for example, the Sentinel-2. In that case, we're using it for validating those AOIs. We're not using it in production as the main source of imagery, but we are using it to validate the areas where we're getting images from, if that makes sense. So we had to train some models to detect construction sites. And you can see some examples there across timing, where those construction sites are being identified and followed across. So that is one example as we're using this open data mixed with commercial tasking data. We're also using building footprints. So these are being used to exclude areas where we don't want to predict or detect, right? So there are a lot of areas that are completely saturated with houses that have been existing for many years. And we don't want to predict and waste time predicting that or getting images from those places because there won't be any starts there. Other examples may be national parks, forests, or areas that there can't be any construction there. So we don't task it. And we use these building footprints to do that. Similarly, we also use Tiger Line road data because we're not interested in roads. So we just remove it completely from the AOIs that we are tasking imagery for. In terms of open source, so we are completely based off Python. So we took a very different approach from the beginning. The reason being the detection that this product requires is very specific in terms of timing and detail of features. So we knew from the beginning we would have to train our custom models. So this whole project is based off computer vision and they're called CNNs. I think some of you may have heard of this. So these are convolutional neural networks. This is a machine learning approach where you train on images and then it's able to predict on images. So we've used Python for everything in this project you see here. So all the way from ingesting the images, pre-processing, labeling and training, detecting, post-processing, aggregating, validating, dashboards, reporting. So it's completely open source in that approach. And that way we've done all of that alongside with subject matter experts from Census team to help us build that and improve it along the way. So what are some examples of these models? So one of them, or the main model, is the construction stage model. The reason I mentioned this project is very peculiar in terms of its needs is that we have to capture the transition between each construction stage on a monthly basis. That is a very difficult thing to do on your average change detection or some of the more standard approaches from using imagery. So we had to train custom CNNs. So here's some examples these are the labels actually that we've done. So you can see on red, those are completed roofs. On yellow, that's an excavation or foundation, sorry. On brown, you can see a foundation. So we've labeled thousands and thousands of images with the subject matter experts as well in our teams, and we'll be able to train this, we call it construction stage model. Here are some predictions you can see from it. So again, then it changed colors, but the classes that it's able to predict are there. And we're doing this on a monthly basis, predicting on these images, trying to find when does it go from vegetation to foundation, for example, or land to excavation. We'll consider those starts. So this is one of our main models that we use on this pipeline. Similarly, we have a building type model. So that's on the higher level where we can detect what kind of zones, right? Is this residential, commercial, non-residential? If it's residential, is it single family attached, single family detached? Those are all informations that this specific model does. Very similarly, we label it that way, and then we can predict it later. And then obviously these are more complicated because it's a larger area. So we do some refinement later on the masks. And then we have a third model, which is the newest that's been used, which is the super resolution model. So one of the things that we got to with our current status is this project works really well with 50 centimeter imagery. As you can imagine, it's a high resolution data type, but to scale, we really need to lower the resolution essentially so we can cover more areas. Primarily, we started doing the South region and collecting some areas across the US for validation. but the goal is really to go to a national level in the next iteration. That meant we had to provide an option for scalability, right? So what we looked at were two other sources of data, 1.5 meter resolution, 4.7. These are from commercial sources, Airbus and Planet imagery, and they have their peculiarities in terms of frequency and the format that they come in. But what the team was tasked to do was, can we achieve similar results at the 50 centimeter than by using the other lower resolutions? And we're on the way. That's the current status that we're working on. But how do we accomplish that is actually using these super resolution models. That's another type of CNN type of model. And it trains on the 50 centimeter and then applies the features learned on the lower resolutions, either 1.5 or 4.7. And it's synthetically improving the resolution of those images. It's sharpening the features that are on there by learning the features on the higher resolution. So we're leveraging these super resolutions a lot to be able to scale, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then the last thing here is, what did we not use? So we did not use parcels, we did not use permits. Now, you may be asking, if that data is so closely related to what you do, why are you not using that? The reason is the frequency. I think that's the primary reason. As I mentioned, this is a monthly indicator. That means we have to collect data sub-monthly, ideally, or at least monthly, very consistently on each jurisdiction, on each place we're tasking or creating that data. Unfortunately, with a lot of the parcels and permits, they work better for less frequent products, right? Whether quarterly or six months. So we were not able to use this. How do we do that in terms of operationalizing this? We take all those predictions from the computer vision models and we create business rules. So essentially we check if it's transitioning from land to excavation or foundation, as I mentioned, and then you arrive at a start, in progress, or completion. We also have to do a lot of imputation. So obviously sometimes you don't have imagery due to cloud reasons or now more recently from these recent events you're hearing around the world. So we have to do some imputation. Cloud coverage example, we have some rules that we apply. For sake of time, I can answer that later if you guys have some questions. We also have to adjust for capture window. Again, we're trying to task the last 10 days of the month to be able to represent the last month's worth of activity. So that also makes it more difficult to be able to capture the right amount of data every month, and you have to adjust that in the methodology. So here's a little bit of the flow from getting the images, performing the model predictions, business rules, post-processing, statistical adjustments, and then blending in with the current survey-based estimate to get a total estimate. And that's what we were able to publish as an experimental data product, which if you search on census.gov website, you'll be able to find those satellite starts. It's tracked really well. I think the F1 score is 78% at the 50 centimeter, and we're pushing it. Now the lower resolutions should be able to achieve the same type of resolution, so we can scale well. Why that matters? Again, we'd like to reduce the reliance on manual field burden and improve scalability as well. We'd like to improve the coverage and granularity. With this approach, you're not relying on just some samples. You're actually, when you task an area, you are literally analyzing every single construction or property in that one area you have the satellite image for. So your granularity improves tremendously, right, in terms of efficiency. And I think this really shows how the geospatial AI can strengthen some economic indicators or other infrastructure programs. Now I'll talk a little bit about challenges. So scalability, I think, definitely is the major point, but also opportunity. So as we're looking at some of these sources of imagery that are lower resolution, they also present opportunities potentially in terms of frequency. So that is something we're leveraging in terms of how can we, what is the trade-off between lower resolution, more coverage, potentially more frequency. So that is the current status that we're working towards. We're optimistic. These super resolution models work really well. I'd love to chat later if you have some questions on those, but they're helping us use these lower res almost at the same quality as the high res images. We're also studying how we have some prototypes of how to use facade imagery. So this is an example from Google Street View, but these could be drones or other type of image collections where you see it from the front. And you can also do some analysis with computer vision, same type of open source Python models, where you detect other features that you cannot see from above because it's a top-down versus a front-facing angle. So we're studying how to use those features. And again, how can we leverage, once we get these images, yes, we're tracking construction data, but what else can we do with the same images we're gathering? Because that is the secret, I think, for the geospatial, for satellite imagery, computer vision, is to leverage it multiple times, multiple data products, the same inputs you're getting. That's how you get the most out of this. So love to answer any questions later on about this project. There's a lot more details, a lot more stats behind the scenes, but really appreciate the time for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hector. All right, so our next speaker is going to be James Cloninger, who's the CEO of Motive and one of our FedGeoDay sponsors. They are the people who've been doing our website, and he has this year's update of our GIO survey. But before I let James come on, I want to invite everybody. We have enough room in the workshops to accommodate more people, so anyone is invited to attend one of the workshops that are after this. We have the population for resilience. I see Marie. I'm sure many of you are already going to be there because it's a fabulous workshop there. We have the NOAA National Geodetic Survey team doing their update on the NSRS workshop, which is going to be fantastic. We have the World Cafe infrastructure resilience workshop all set, and then of course the GeoServer 3 for the folks who signed up. So anyway, please go to we also have the unconference out here, but I'm going to turn it over to James, and then after James is done, it'll be lunchtime. Again, if you ordered vegan or vegetarian, please take that, and if you didn't, please leave it for the vegans and vegetarians. Thank you. Thank you.
Navigate. I think I can find that. I think so. All right. All right, so we're going to have a little bit of fun before lunch. I'm the only one preventing us from the food, right? So this is year 2. Last year, I presented the first geospatial and federal report. This is the second one, so we'll have some comparative information here. Let's see if I can figure out this. There we go. Before I jump in, so this is a survey I sent out last year to about 150 GIOs and geospatial leaders across the federal government. As far as I know, all of those people are federal employees. Last year, about 30 of the emails that I sent out came back undeliverable. So there was some, people no longer in their positions. This year it was about 57 from last year whose emails worked last year and this year did not. So we had 57% of the people who got it responded. So there's 30 something people. So this is a reflection of probably not the same people as last year, but the same questions asked twice. Okay, so the first question, how has it changed? So last year in all these slides, the lighter blue is last year's results. Obviously, it looked like last year there was a lot of change, and this year's kind of broader answers. Some of these are going to be purely for fun too, by the way. So here's one of those. What do you do when you see a really bad map? Any answers from today? What do you guys do when you see a terrible map? I take a picture of it. I want to keep that. So it's not my response over here, but I agree with save it. So these are in order ranked by the respondents, which are the trends will have the most impact on federal agencies in the next 3 to 5 years. These are almost exactly the same order as last year. The only change was the UAVs and remote sensing were number 4 last year, and now they moved down to number 6. But other than that, everything else is almost, well, it's identical. What challenges do you face in integrating geospatial data and systems into enterprise decision-making? Last year, the challenges were silos and budget constraints. This year, silos are a larger concern, but there were more answers. And I'm curious about a couple people, probably 3 or 4 people that said, no challenges, none. So I don't know what agency they work for, but sounds great. How is geospatial expertise structured? So we have centralized, distributed, and hybrid. Last year, really big percentage of the respondents said hybrid. That kind of came down, and we have kind of broad across the board. This question also, there were about 20-something respondents, so I started putting everything in there, and then budget was about 90% of them, so I just put it in there a few times, but you can see some clear themes. What's the biggest challenge in attracting and retaining geospatial talent? Budget, salaries, and budget. So that was a pretty clear one. By the way, I will be compiling this into a report and sending it back out to all the people that participated, and I think we'll put it on the FedGeoDay website so anybody can get it too. This is a little interesting visualization. So, from retro to very modern, this is just kind of visualizing the weight of the answers. Not a huge change here. I think more people responded that they're a little more retro, but we also had a couple that were closer to very modern. Last year we didn't have any of those. So, and then what are the barriers to modernizing the geospatial infrastructure? Well, last year it was primarily, the biggest response was legacy system dependencies. And this year it's budget that takes the cake. So no surprise after that previous slide. And then again, I don't know, this is like 3 or 4 people that said no significant barriers. So maybe NASA? No, not NASA. Okay, good. And then does your agency manage geospatial? How does your agency manage geospatial data interoperability? Kind of a more balanced this year. Not a lot of respondents said fully integrated, but partially integrated with some gaps. And then which areas of geospatial governance need the most improvement? Last year, we didn't have everybody answer every question, but of the 20-some people who responded last year, everybody said data sharing and interoperability. And this year we had kind of a more mixed. Thought this one was good. This is a positive sign. Last year, does your agency have a formal geospatial data governance framework? There were a lot more no's. This year it was exactly 50-50. So maybe there was some improvement made across the federal government there. Here's another fun one. How often do you have to explain what GIS is to someone at work? Last year, as you can see, the gray is last year's responses kind of all the way across the board. This year, heavily weighted towards never. So that's a positive sign. Oh, wait, let me go back. But there were some people still all the time. Again, this is just kind of the open responses. So the big winner on what federal policies and mandates have most influenced your agency's strategy, big winner is the Geospatial Data Act. No surprise there. How adequate is current federal funding? Maybe I was a leading question here, but I got a lot more Actually, last year, the predominant answer was somewhere in the middle. This year, it was really far over to the inadequate side. And how does your agency prioritize geospatial spending? This was, again, almost identical to last year. The only change being that last year, other was in last place. This year, other overtook research and innovation. So I don't know if that's a good sign. And then, has your agency explored cost sharing or interagency collaboration to sustain geospatial programs? Last year, no. This year, a lot more, yes. So maybe that's a reflection of the budget constraints. But yeah, positive sign. All right, we have two fun ones left. This is the penultimate fun one. So last year, if your agency's geospatial program had a theme song, what would it be? Last year, it was Survivor, Eye of the Tiger. This year, it was I Will Survive. So more determination. I think that feels good. But also more broad answers. Nobody in 2 years has selected We Will Rock You. So that's what I'm hoping for someday. Next year, We Will Rock You, okay? How well does your agency engage with external partners? I think everyone's given themselves good grades here. So very well to well, only very few not wells. And then which external partnerships? Last year was kind of across federal, state, and private industry. This year, I don't know what happened. Private industry and state and local government are not being collaborated with. And then just a little shift, I tried to use these, there was pretty well spread across the spectrum on this question, how important open source geospatial to your agency's operations? I think last year it would have fallen between 2 and 8 on a 10-point scale. This time let's say it went from 4 to 10. So moving towards very important. Again, these are just kind of open form responses, but how can federal agencies better collaborate with industry, academia, and other partners? A lot of responses about, come to FedGeoDay, have interns, cut the bureaucratic red tape. And our last slide before lunch, which fictional character best represents your role in your organization? And last year we had almost everybody said MacGyver. So they were trying to get out of the burning building with a pocket knife. This year, Dora the Explorer. So I think that's a positive sign. She looks pretty happy. Thank you for everybody that participated. Hopefully we get more next year. And if you are somebody that you think should have been on here, or you know somebody, please send me your information because my mailing list is dwindling from 2 years ago. So thank you very much.
As you head to lunch, be sure and thank Carla and the census staff who've been so helpful in every way. And again, thank you so much to the Census Bureau for hosting us. So head to lunch, and then everybody, you're welcome to workshops, and we hope to see you there. I'll leave it. That was great.
Good job, man. What's your name? Jared Brewster. I'm with Planet. Yeah.
You're Planet.
Okay. And he's one of our partners. Good guy. Okay. So I was like, pictures of